Are you seeing Big Bang cosmology falsifies God?
The one thing that I've seen this guy give a opening statement in the previous debate that he did, and
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see what it was like with a slightly different subject in your debate, because the debate that I saw was when he debated Max about
Yeah.
like Noah's flood, and his
Yeah.
opening there was just the most arrogant overconfidence in like
Yes.
the most basal elementary school fallacies. Like if this, it's like you learn this science in elementary school and it's very easily demonstrated, and he's just claiming like the most absurd, easily falsifiable things. I mean, it was just like back to back to back to back every
Yeah.
single sentence almost.
Yeah. He opened with the E equals MC squared thing, and there's evidence for that energy, he tried to see energy was consciousness, and the evidence for that was slime molds.
Oh my god, I really have to see this. The way you're describing it, it almost reads more like a stand-up comedy routine than anything. Like I think I'm probably going to be laughing the whole time. This
I
Yeah, it
is
was like a 20-minute conversation on it.
Yeah, like on slime molds. I'm like reading a PubMed article about how we sort of see correlates between our neurological system and stuff and slime molds. Like it's not the same as our nervous system, but there's these things, tubular things, and like this dentary tree or what
yeah.
words I don't know. I'm just reading what it says, and how they explain it is sort of analogous to
Yeah.
a brain and central nervous system to see. And then I try to explain to him, and he says, well, it's an electrical system. Well, electricity itself, it's not energy.
It sounds like
Electricity.
it sounds like I really want to ask this guy. It sounds like he thinks that a thermostat is conscious because it's making decisions. It's deciding when
Yes.
to cool the room and when not to cool the room, and it's electricity, you know. And it just sounds like a thermostat would categorize as conscious, a conscious being in this guy's worldview.
I upset people in the comments when I said electricity wasn't energy too. Like people respond in the comments and like electricity can be used to do things, like, but you have to create a circuit, and electrical charge itself is just potential energy.
Yeah,
And
electricity has energy. It is not equivalent to energy. Energy is a property. It's like
yeah,
measured in
thank
joules.
you.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a property that things have. It's not an entity in and of itself. Like
Yes.
pure, but when people talk about pure energy, what they really mean is pure radiation, like photon.
Yeah. Well, I always that's why I was trying to argue with, like, energy is the potential to do the work. No, it's not. Like, so if you actually study the physics, physicists always say it's all this other stuff. It's like science communicators suck sometimes at seeing stuff, so they might see it's like energy, but they're not really using it in that context.
Yeah.
Like they're describing it this way, like in like normal language, but energy is the ability to do work. It's sort of like a property of a thing. It is not a substance. Like you understand that. Like
Yes.
the simples, as far as we understand, the simples is bosons and fermions, as far as we know. I think the smallest thing is energy is not a thing. It's just the
Yeah.
potential to do work or work.
Yeah. It's like talking about pure temperature. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It's a category error. But hey, Issa, how's it going? Did you guys want to talk about
Yeah.
Big Bang cosmology at all?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
So I was
brother,
supposed
good
to
to
have a
see you.
debate.
It's good to see you again.
We were supposed to have a debate tonight between Dr. J and Flat Earth J about biblical cosmology, because Flat Earth J, I did a debate with him, and he said that the globe would falsify the Bible for him, and he would become an atheist, or he wouldn't believe in the Bible anymore. And I'm like,
I've heard that before.
what is wrong with you people?
Yeah. I've literally heard somebody say to me point blank as an if-then statement, if the earth is not flat, then God isn't real. Like verbatim, that's what they told me.
Wow. Then your God isn't real, but that doesn't mean. But you imagine going in as an atheist and argue that the Earth is globe, God don't exist.
Yeah,
Dude,
I never thought about that from the other team. Like, if next time I do like an atheist versus theist debate, I'll be like, "Here's the evidence for atheism. The world is not flat. There you go. Mission
Big Bang
accomplished."
cosmology is true. And they always point to he tried to point to Aaron Ross saying, "Well, evolution is true, therefore God is not." Like, I don't care what Aaron Ross said. Aaron Ross is not a philosopher. He has his own arguments. Like, well, he's a big voice. He's really not that big of a voice. Like, he's big in like a certain community, but most people on planet Earth don't know who he is.
I will say, I literally I just had an appearance on Aaron's channel like yesterday. And I got to say, that really boosted up my channel's numbers. So
Awesome.
He's got a certain amount of influence for sure. I don't know what exactly the point that Aaron was making that you guys were going back and forth with the debate. I'm definitely going to check it out, though, because
I don't either.
You have exceedingly piqued my interest about what the back and forth here.
My only point was, I don't care what Aaron says. Aaron denies having beliefs sometimes, but he really is. He's really denying having Christian beliefs, like beliefs on faith.
Well, I agree. We all have beliefs. I mean, knowledge is a subset of belief. So.
Thank you. Well, you're more into philosophy than he is. But yeah, so you wanted to. So because that debate didn't happen, I sort of wanted to talk about Big Bang cosmology because I think it's related to the last 2 days. I just sort of wanted to stream because I had something scheduled and it got canceled because the guy had family camping he's going to family camping an hour before we're scheduled. Okay.
Wow.
Right.
All right. Seems like
you
wanted an excuse to back out of that when he was scheduling everything, but okay.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about radiation and stuff like that. You made a video about it.
Yeah. I just literally, it's crazy. When I saw the topic for this, I was like, wow, me and Ozian are on the same wavelength here because I literally just less than an hour ago put out a video about the power spectrum. Which I would consider to be the single strongest evidence for the Big Bang. Not just the Big Bang, but the Lambda CDM model as a whole. So dark matter, dark energy inflation, the Big Bang, the whole canoodle. So if really the only thing that I would need to talk about is if you could, am I able to screen share here?
Yeah.
Then let me get the CMB power spectrum so that people just have a visual of what I would be talking about because it's a chart, it's a graph.
What
are you saying?
I could probably pull it up too.
I've got it up here, so let me share my screen here. Sorry for the slight delay, but it's kind of complex because it involves some.
Make sure you make it narrow if you can. Here,
I'm just on my computer here, so I can zoom in a bit more. But is this enough to where you can see the green and the red lines here? So the green here is the theoretical prediction based on the Big Bang model. And then the red is the actual observations back in 2018 with the Planck satellite. So you can see here, this is not just a random pattern, right? I mean, this is a very specific, each hump has its own specific behavior, and the predicted shape of this is exactly matching with what the actual measurements turned out to be. So
can you describe the scale, what the scale is measuring?
Yes. So here on the left axis here, we have a magnitude of temperature variations. So you're familiar with, you're familiar with the overall image of the cosmic microwave background. It's pretty famous, right? Like this right here. So these represent temperature fluctuations. The blue is colder, the red is warmer. And so when you map these temperature fluctuations as a function of what's called the multipole, the moment, this L value right here, you get this very, very specific pattern here that you really would take a lot of degrees of freedom in order to replicate it numerically without the actual physics equations. And when you use the equations of cosmology, there's literally only 6 fundamental parameters that this thing depends on for its shape. And those 6 fundamental parameters can be measured. You can ascertain their value with totally independent methods of measurement that don't involve the CMB. So you can look at the way galaxies move, and you can estimate the total amount of dark matter, and you can use that number to help to make this prediction here in green. So you're making a very precise mathematical prediction based on the Big Bang model. Like, in order to make this, what is necessary is that there are time boundary conditions. There's a t=0 moment. It requires inflation. It requires dark matter, dark energy, the things that we observe using other methods. And all of that put together, you crunch the numbers, you get this prediction. And it was absurd how high this matched exactly with the actual measurements. So this is what I would consider to be, like, one of the most accurate predictions, one of the strongest lines of evidence that the Big Bang did happen. If you deny that the Big Bang happened, it's your job to explain how you can predict this exact shape. What math are you going to use to get this exact shape that matches these measurements? What kind of dynamics are going to be at play there? Because this literally cannot be described using any physics other than the Big Bang, dark matter, dark energy, the lambda CDM model as a whole. That's the basic idea of it anyway.
Right. So does it just require time zero for our universe from the expansionary point? It doesn't necessarily say like time zero, absolute time zero, just for what we observe.
The time zero, you could designate it whatever you want, but basically what it means physically is that the initial primordial oscillations that contribute to the actual shape of this graph all needed to be at the same starting point. So that starting point is designated as 0.
Okay.
So it doesn't say, there could be nothing before then. That's the beginning of time. That just means that all of the initial oscillations start at the same starting point, the same amplitude, the same overall start. And then you need an ending bound, which is about 380,000 years. That's at the formation of the CMB. So those are the time conditions that are required to get this pattern.
So what was done first? Did they predict this first, or did they predict it first?
Yeah, it was predicted before the measurements were done. So, for example, it was initially predicted by Jim Peebles, a cosmologist who's a Nobel Prize winner. He predicted this in the 1970s. But of course, that he did have dark matter in the calculations, but he didn't have dark energy. And so it wasn't until the late 90s when dark energy was observed that the value for the energy density for dark energy was then added, and then you get a better fit. So it wasn't until we had other methods of observing what was going on in the universe that we could get more accurate assessments of these 6 fundamental parameters.
Awesome. We have a bunch of, I want to address this really quick. It's flat earthers that like me. Lumpy gas in a vacuum, demonstrate gas pressure without containment. Not so. I just want to make this very clear. There is a pressure gradient that expands throughout the entire universe. It's just not the Earth. So under the model that he described, there's no part of the universe that is empty. Nothing is empty. Well, as far maybe around a black hole, I don't know. Is there any part that we think that is empty of all mass, energy, fields, like completely empty? No. So it is all a pressure gradient. That amount of mass that accumulates is defined by this force that extends an infinite distance. Well, not infinite distance, that travels at the speed of light, that can extend infinitely and is universal. It's called gravity. That pulls that matter to the other bodies. So anyways, I just want to point that out. So no one that understands the cosmological model that we talk about would say that there is not pressure. Like there is no negative pressure. Negative pressure things are some type of artificial thing that are created to suck matter from one point to another, like gravity sucks matter from one point to another. You can see like the Earth is a vacuum, right? Isn't it sucking matter down?
We do know of some instances of negative pressure for like vacuum energy, for instance. The whole reason why so many physicists wanted to attribute dark energy to the vacuum was because dark energy has a negative pressure and the vacuum energy has a negative pressure as well. That's just how like the equation of state comes out in the physics equations. But
I
yeah,
saw that.
I mean, it is really just, I mean, if you see how pressure falls off with height, it logically follows that it's going to asymptotically approach zero, and it's contained.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a force that is keeping all of this this pressure contained, that is an explanation. You can point to other examples. You know, you can have like you can use the electromagnetic force to contain plasma, which has pressure and it is a fluid. You can have a water droplet, which is contained by the electromagnetic forces that are responsible for the cohesion of water. So there's a force that's containing a pressure without a container. It's a liquid pressure, still fluid like a gas is. So yeah, there are other examples that you can pull to of examples where forces are able to constrain fluids and that maintain a pressure without a container. So there are lots of other examples of it.
Yeah, and the laws of thermodynamics describe systems. They don't prescribe how everything is. So people will read something that says in these systems, it doesn't say that all systems are closed or open. It's just a way to describe open, closed, and isolated systems, as far as I understand the 4 laws of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
I like saying 4 laws because it messes with people's head, because there are 4. Yeah. So people will say like antecedent to pressure is containment, but that's nowhere. That doesn't say that anywhere. That's just it's something, I think it's Nathan Oakley or one of those people just made it up.
Yeah. I mean, that's all it really is people parroting things that they've heard from other flirts. But if you trace it all the way back, it's never like an actual physicist or someone that studies thermodynamics or gas behaviors. You never trace it back to any actual relevant expert. You always just trace it back to some flurf on YouTube or Discord.
Yeah.
I've seen this guy. I think he's a flurf here in your chat. He keeps asking about, you know, do you actually observe dark matter? And yeah, you observe
you do.
like, its actual dynamics. You can make very detailed measurements of dark matter via, you know, galaxies, how they rotate, how galactic clusters behave. You can look at how galactic clusters collide, like the Bullet cluster. There is, you know, I know that Whitsitt likes to go on about MOND, modified Newtonian gravity, and saying that if you have that, you don't need dark matter. But MOND absolutely fails at actually explaining our observations. Like the Bullet cluster is a prime example. Nothing in MOND can explain what we observe happening with the Bullet cluster, which is where you have these clusters of galaxies colliding. And you can actually see, based on their actual physics of their dynamic, that there is matter. There's actual mass that is in between them that is not colliding with each other. Yeah, you can see it highlighted there in that like red, that pinkish magenta color. Like that is the dark matter. And you can see like that area has mass, even though there's no galaxies there. It's a different type of matter. And you can tell that it doesn't interact with itself. It doesn't have collisions. It's collisionless, exactly as dark matter is. There is no alternative explanation to the dynamics of the Bullet cluster, like besides dark matter. There's nobody can explain what is happening here if you think dark matter doesn't exist. So
yeah,
and there's
and
about,
so
if you were to sum it all up, there's about 7 different independent methods of determining how much dark matter there is. And they all cross corroborate each other and give the same value.
yeah, measurements of a prediction is evidence of the prediction. So we measure a thing for dark matter. We had an observation. We were completely wrong at first, right? Like we had it. Our predictions were wrong about dark energy and dark matter. I think, was it 35 they first observed it? Like they always bring it up in the flat Earth debates. But,
like Fritz Zwicky.
Yeah.
I think that he first coined the term Dunkel Materia in German, dark matter, in like the 30s. So
Yeah.
But then Vera Rubin really came in later, I think maybe 30 years after that, in her descriptions of the ways that galaxies rotate.
And it's not 96% of everything that exists. It's 90. It might be 96% of matter. Is it 96% of matter?
So dark matter plus dark energy is 96% of the total energy density. About 4% is ordinary baryonic matter. So that's when you're talking about total, and the 96% is including dark matter and dark energy together. In terms of the total percentage of matter, I think dark matter is something like
27.
Yeah, like somewhere around a third of the total matter.
Yeah, NASA's website saying NASA is saying dark matter is 27%, matters 5% of the what exists. So what is energy then? Like, is potential kinetic? Like, but it's not a substance.
Yeah,
Is it
you
a substance?
described it well earlier. You said it's the potential to do work, or it's something that changes the wave function of potential energy and kinetic energy both change the wave function of a particle. But
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, just the potential to do work is probably the best, most simplest explanation of it. Energy is a property that things have that can be measured in joules or newtons. It's not a thing. It's not a substance by itself.
So the universe is made up of 32% of matter, 5% of its matter, 27% of its dark matter, and that is it. So but then it's fields, matter.
The rest is dark energy.
Huh?
The rest is dark energy. In terms of what percentage of that is made up by stuff like photons, it's a fraction of a percent.
So we don't know what dark energy is, whether it's
dark energy is just basically this unknown dynamic of the universe that accounts for around 70% of the total energy density of the universe, and we know that is the energy that is required to drive the expansion of the universe. So it's whatever's causing the universe to accelerate in its expansion is just coined the term dark energy.
No, lumpy gas. We respect people that have knowledge, that spend time to actually study the physics behind it, that just don't make up post hoc explanations for visual observations without doing any experimentation. Science is not about throwing trash in a Van de Graaff generator and saying that's gravity.
Yeah, and he was also asking, along with defining energy, he was asking for defining like mass and matter. I would say, matter is things that have mass, and mass is a property of your interaction with the Higgs field. So that's my short.
We don't really know.
Yeah, it's very difficult to describe like what mass is, but we know that it is a result of the interaction with the Higgs field. So
did you see Sabine's video about Einstein's work? He was trying to, but he didn't understand the strong and weak nuclear force. I didn't even realize that. Like those concepts came up after he died.
Yeah,
ring laser gyroscopes didn't exist. Like optical tests that could test the movement of Earth did not exist when Einstein was alive. So anytime they bring it up, it's like, well, we didn't have ring laser gyroscopes. So he wouldn't have said something that stupid because we could have used.
So now I see the flat earther in your chat is going about the same basic route of science denialism. Now that I've given the definitions that he asked for, he says, "Where's the Higgs field so I can validate it?" And it's like this kind of mindset. If it's something that you cannot personally verify, having no expertise in the field, no capital at your disposal to like pay for equipment, if it's anything that commonplace, cheap equipment available to you personally cannot determine, therefore it cannot be real, or you have to reject it. There is absolutely no acceptance that there are actually machines like the Large Hadron Collider which confirmed the existence of the Higgs field. Anything that's beyond their personal ability to access is a conspiracy.
And then it's not therefore flat. That's
yeah. Well, I mean, the Large Hadron Collider would have been built completely differently if the Earth was actually flat. I mean, it's got to, the thing doesn't bend with the Earth. It goes, it has to all be more than level. It has to be straight, just like
Oh, really?
the LIGO detector in Louisiana and in Washington. They could not build it level because level is not straight enough. They needed it to be straight. And so they had to they basically had to go one step beyond like GPS and a lot of current surveying technology, because that thing is really, really far. It's like 4 kilometers for each arm. And in order to make it straight and not just level, they had to use like a bunch of satellites to get this thing perfectly straight. And they had to build a mound of dirt that was like an extra meter or something on the other side in order to compensate for the curve of the Earth. So this is why they have to deny these machines, because you can't have this machine built the way it is on a flat Earth.
Let's say
And you
some
can come
people.
up on stage. Lumpy, if you want to come up on stage, feel free to click the link at the top and have a discussion about why you deny cosmology. But go ahead, DJ.
Speaking on the Huge Hadron Collider, I've seen some people, not deny it, but they just kind of bring up all these conspiracy theories of their opening up portals and hell and all this other stuff. So, which I think is interesting because I've watched the documentary when they were first getting it up and running and stuff, which was really cool and really informative and stuff. And I think I think the Huge Hadron Collider is definitely a great thing. Because it helps us understand things a bit better. But I will say on a different thing is one thing I always think it's funny when I see on social media, especially with some flat earthers, that aren't big, but smaller ones that talk about like the sun being like, well, if it's a fireball in space, how could it be lit? Because fire can't exist in space. I'm like, that's because it's a plasma. It's not a fire like you do like in a campfire. It's not the same thing.
But I posted the link there, so if you're seeing the link doesn't work, that's just because you didn't click it or you don't have your microphone set up.
I mean,
I don't know.
I followed the link that Ozian had pinned in the live chat, and I made it here just fine. So unless it's another big conspiracy, then I think maybe
YouTube trying to keep the flat earthers down.
Yeah,
they don't want the truth coming out.
Exactly.
So that's good to hear. So like my main impetus was in the debate, like once again they keep saying like the hot dense state is the singularity, but the hot dense state is this whatever, it was a small dense state. We don't know if it was the singularity. We don't know how big it was. We don't know if it was time zero or not. It looks like the evidence you're showing is pointing towards there being more evidence pointing towards there being a time zero.
At least a point in time where all the primordial oscillations like had an equal value. So
yeah,
that's like a good enough t equals 0 for me personally. I mean, I don't know, what more you want from that, but yeah, the whole idea of I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Actually, sorry.
The
about
hot
that.
dense. So I call it the hot dense state,
right.
not a singularity.
So
because we don't know if it was a singularity.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. The point I was trying to make was that there are singularities that appear in the mathematics of like other areas of physics, like in fluid dynamics. When you have a little droplet that forms on the tip of your sink, at the very leading edge of that singularity, of the leading edge of that droplet, is a mathematical singularity in the mathematics of fluid dynamics. The actual equations that describe fluid dynamics start spitting out a singularity when you try to calculate values at that very leading tip of a water droplet. That doesn't mean that there's an actual singularity every time a droplet comes out of your sink. That's just a result of the fact that sometimes the equations break down at certain extremes. And that's all that's going on with the equations of general relativity when we get back to the extremes of the early universe and it starts spitting out infinites and it is a singularity. It's very analogous. It's just a breakdown in the math. So yeah, a very small, hotter, denser state is a much more accurate physical picture of what's going on.
I love all the Christians that follow me now because I don't because we're saying like it's okay to be a Christian and accept all this science here. We welcome you to our
Exactly.
channel because I'm all about the science, like understand the nature of this true earth that we live on, this true world that we live on. I'm going to remove the people that have cameras, but your voices will still be heard. I just want to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So hold on one second. And there, oh no, it adds everybody back, but at least we're bigger. There we go. So I'm really happy to have you all here. I welcome the flat earthers to come up on stage too. Click the link at the top. But so that was my impetus, was the singularity, because it was atheists that argue with me that, oh no, but I was taught the singularity was true when I was a kid growing up. But when did that change? Was it in, I heard it was like the 90s that they used to teach singularity, then they changed it. And
So like within like the classical general relativity picture, it was typically described as like a singularity. But really there has never been a time where it was actually accurate to describe the singularity as a real thing, because at no point in human history have we had a working consensus model of quantum gravity. So without that, at a certain point, the equations of general relativity break down and are no longer valid for that scale that you're trying to describe. So that has always been the case. So I don't know when they started changing the language in which they use to describe it, but it has never been the case because we've never had a consensus theory of quantum gravity. So it's never been the case that it would be accurate to think that the singularity was real, because all it's describing is a point where our actual equations can no longer describe reality.
what about the concept, like scientists will say, well, gravity's not real, it's just but I don't like emergent properties until we have a full explanation for why an emergent property exists. I just accept that the emergent property exists. So like to me, gravity exists, it's a real force. Like, but I'm taking a philosophical position towards a view, not a scientific position towards a view.
So some scientists may say stuff like gravity is just an emergent property and doesn't exist on a fundamental level, and they're basing that off of like holography and string theory in a way. It's called ADS-CFT correspondence is the name of the principle. But that basically the idea is that not just gravity is emergent, but space and time, space-time is emergent. So gravity is the distortion, the curvature of space-time. So if space and time are emergent and are not fundamental, and fundamentally it's just quantum mechanics without space and time, then gravity would be emergent just like space-time is. But again, this is theoretical. It's based on like holography, string theory. There's some other approaches that rely less on those terms and rely on stuff like quantum entanglement. But still, at this point, it's just hypothetical. It's a hypothetical way of explaining quantum gravity.
Can I ask?
Yeah, but just because it's not a fundamental, really quick, just because it's, I want to narrow this down. Just because it's not a fundamental force, and let's say it is an emergent force, just because it's an emergent force doesn't mean it's not real. That's my problem with the language they use. Emergent properties actually exist, and we can use it as a placeholder, like psychology exists. We don't fully understand psychology, but to pretend like pain doesn't exist because we don't fully understand pain, except as an emergent property of mind, would be a disservice to people suffering from pain. So like this thing, yeah.
Sorry. I was going to say, like the example that we already gave of an emergent property, temperature. Nobody would go outside and say, oh, it's so hot. And then somebody's like, well, actually, temperature doesn't exist. It's not real. It's all just the kinetic energy of molecules. Come on, nobody's going to say that. So it is probably just like loose sensationalist language in like science journalists.
Yes, but yeah, okay. Sorry, Tyler, what did you have to say?
Oh, I just, because this was a very fascinating conversation, and I really appreciated the definition regarding energy, and I was just wondering Grayson had to say regarding time, because it's been the focus of my studies lately about like energy and time, and I was just wondering what he had to say as far as a concise definition, like what he provided regarding energy.
Yeah, I mean, time is a little bit trickier to give like a concise explanation for, but I mean, some sort of causal ordering of events maybe would be my intuition on it. But honestly, I haven't thought as much about what is time as I have like what is energy, or some of the other topics that we've been thinking of. Time is still kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around. Like, whenever I think of some of the things that are proposed by physicists about space-time not being fundamental, and this is not like some fringe thing, like physicists are talking about this from like Harvard and Princeton and MIT, like people are doing work on this like now. And when I try to think about the dynamics of a world that doesn't have space or time as a fundamental, it doesn't compute. I cannot even imagine that. I can think of maybe I can think of some kind of way without space, but without time, it seems much more difficult to wrap my head around, because time is integral to literally everything that we know about reality, from actually having thoughts to having any dynamics at all requires change. It requires time.
Like half-lives, because what I found was fascinating, I was reading about there's some like isolated tribes, and their concept for time is so vastly different from the rest of the world. They tend to measure it as a property of space. Like, to them, time is like distance, or like the distance between point A and point B. Like, their concept is so vastly different. And I was just thinking about how, like, as things speed up, the progression through time seems to slow down. And as I understand, if one could exceed the speed of light, technically, like, it's theorized that they would be going backward in time, or at the speed of light, time ceases, kind of a thing. And so I was wondering just how that correlates to what these other tribes were saying about how time is more of a property of distance. And so there's this movement that's required for time to exist. And I was just, trying to pick your brain on that, because the subject turned to something that was so fascinating. And then we started addressing trolls in the chat, and I kind of wanted to bring it back into the realm of I guess admittedly what I'm interested in, instead of just flat earth again.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a misnomer to talk about time. It goes more slowly for like you were moving faster, because it has to be more slowly relative to what? Because from the perspective of the person moving extremely fast, time, their experience of time hasn't changed at all. It still ticks by at the same rate. But relative to an observer that's not moving that fast, the time is ticking at a different rate for that other person. So it's really relative. That's sort of what Einstein showed, is that the way that everybody always thought about time as saying, my 8 o'clock is the same as your 8 o'clock, and we can both experience 8 o'clock simultaneously from wherever our surroundings are. That is not true in general relativity. There is no universal simultaneous. There's no simultaneous moment that's happening through the universe. Every location in space, every observer is experiencing their own local time. So it definitely breaks down this idea of time as being this, this big universal thing where each moment is happening at every point in the universe at once. And we can think of other locations that are like people that are doing stuff at the same time we're doing them. It sort of starts to break down that entire notion.
Okay, so because you were speaking earlier, or at least the conversation earlier was in regards to gravity. And as I understand, the calculations for increase of gravity have also had an effect on time. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that. Kind of like, I saw this whole thing about like the math regarding that movie Interstellar. When they got close to the black hole, it was actually surprisingly accurate as far as our current models are.
That's because Kip Thorne, who's like a Nobel Prize winning physicist who specializes in like space, time, and gravity and black holes, he was an advisor on Interstellar. He tried to advise Christopher Nolan to go a different route for the ending, but on all the stuff that Chris Nolan, what was that, Ozian?
They got the tides wrong on that stinking planet, the big huge tidal wave bullshit.
So
Wait, go
on all the stuff that Christopher Nolan deemed was not essential to the plot, he was willing to bend for Kip Thorne, the actual physicist, and his input. He didn't listen to everything Kip Thorne had to say. Like Christopher Nolan was like, we really need a giant freaking tide that's going to make this cinematic moment, or we really need this ending where we go inside of a black hole. And, that stuff Chris Nolan considered essential to the plot. But the physicist really did have a lot of input on a lot of the stuff that was deemed less essential. So that explains at least partly that. But in terms of what you're describing with the ticking of clocks, the flow of time being different for different gravitational potentials, we've observed that on like really, really tiny scale.
Microns.
Yeah, it's like sub-millimeter.
200 microns.
The difference between what's like a clock that's ticking here and a clock that's ticking less than a millimeter higher. We've observed that difference experimentally. So we know that this is a phenomenon that is true. It is happening. It is observable. And it's a principle by which we can actually do a lot of really cool technology that, from, gravimeters, the way that they work and the way that they measure gravity, especially like with submarines, can actually map out where they are by just having multiple gravimeters on board that are measuring the strength of gravity that is going to slightly vary depending on how much actual material is underneath of you. So as they go through the ocean and the depths are changing, they can actually map out exactly where they are using a map of gravity. And they can navigate just without having to have any sonar, any pinging, like just completely stealth, using gravity as navigation. So the technology behind gravitational redshift has a lot of really wide-reaching implications.
You just blew my mind. So just to be clear, kind of getting back to because I'm going to be thinking about this all night, I'm sure. You're saying that the passage of time for each individual would be consistent, but it varies from point to point. From the like, if person A is looking at person B in a different gravitational field, their passage of times might be viewed as different, but from the individual perspective, like person A and person B are both like their clocks are ticking to them at the same pace.
Your language is a little bit ambiguous, but your clock relative to your perspective is always going to tick at the same speed. Whenever you watch it, it's always going to be the same speed, no matter what gravitational environment you're in, no matter how fast you're moving. But when other people look at the clock that you have, they're going to see it ticking at different rates depending on how fast you're moving or where you're at. And really interestingly, and of course, the differences that we're talking about on Earth on these small scales is pretty negligible. Like the differences really matter more at the extremes. But for example, because of the difference in gravity at different heights, the time at your head is ticking differently than the time at your feet.
Yeah, I remember seeing a documentary about how like the passage of time is different for people who live on like the top of a building because they're moving through space faster than the people living in the basement, kind of a thing, because of the way
it's not moving. It's a force of gravity is different. It's a force of gravity is different at the top of the building than at the bottom of the building.
So it's not relative to speed, it's gravity, you're saying.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any literature you could recommend so I can kind of read into this a bit more? It's a very fascinating subject for me.
GR in general, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Einstein has a pretty definitive, pretty accessible book just summarizing relativity, where he goes into some of the concepts like time, universal simultaneity. In terms of gravitational redshift, I could point you towards like peer-reviewed literature of like them actually doing these experiments and measuring these differences using real-life atomic clocks. But in terms of the theory, I don't have anything off the top of my head to just summarize everything we've been talking about well.
As far as,
And-
those,
that-
sorry.
The same group that measured the difference in time within microns has actually improved the clocks now, so we might even be able to see even better in testing. Maybe so. The hope eventually is we'll be able to determine what it is sort of at a micro scale, that we can get sort of this quantum understanding of gravity that we're sort of feeling. I just want to point out, Tyler, it seemed like earlier you were sort of talking about the perception of the passing of time versus the actual, when we're talking about a clock ding 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 passing of time. Your perception could be different, because let's just take one simple example. You're in a coma for 10 years, you fall asleep, you wake up 10 years later, your perception of the passing of that 10 years is going to be really quick versus somebody who's actually experienced the whole 10 years. So people could have language that is describing the perception of the passage of time that is different from the physical concepts we're talking about when it comes to the passage of time. So if you're trying to conflate the two issues, we're sort of equivocating, and we should be careful when we try to equivocate those two
Yeah,
things.
a lot of your actual perception of time is determined less so by the actual physics of relativity and more so by the actual dynamics going on in your brain. Like,
Yeah.
there are brain regions that are actually help create this experience of a flow of time, and our perception of how quickly and slowly time is passing. It's a really central part of this brain circuitry. It's called like the SCN. I don't remember right now what SCN stands for, but you could look it up. It's about the size of like a grain of rice. It's really small, kind of in the center of your brain. And there was an instance of this guy who was driving on the highway who had like a micro seizure that disrupted his SCN. And it basically caused him to experience time way differently, to where all the cars just started zooming past him like way faster than he could react to. And he like totally panicked and was driving like 2 miles an hour on the highway. And he had to go to the hospital, and everybody was just talking extremely fast, moving extremely fast. The whole world just sped up around him because, there it is. Thanks, Ozian, in the chat there. The suprachiasmatic nucleus. This SCN.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my studies were more focused on like the neuropsychology thing. So I appreciate you both taking the time to distinguish that difference for me. And then what I was just going to ask was, because you said you can like help me out with some peer-reviewed studies. I don't know if you can drop links into even if it's just a private chat, because I'd certainly be able to. I would certainly be willing to look at those as far as the gravitational aspect of it, so that I can try to kind of understand it from both perspectives. Because like the perception of time, and you're saying that's completely different from. Okay, I'm overwhelmed here, and I'm really greatly appreciative of all.
Yeah, I'll pop the study here in the private chat. I just put a link to it. It's called "Resolving the Gravitational Redshift Within a Millimeter Atomic Sample," and that'd be a good resource for like sort of how they actually are determining this experimentally. So it actually ties in with what this flat earther, who apparently can't figure out how to follow links in the chat, is saying, where he asks. Now he's asked me, prove energy, prove dark matter, prove.
Oh gosh.
All
In
this.
fairness,
Now he says prove bendy spacetime. So that's very easy. We already went over one line of evidence, which is gravitational redshift, that we're using spacetime to make very precise predictions down to like decimal points about how much time should differ from one height to another, that are verified extremely precisely by just the paper that I mentioned. There's one, gravitational redshift. There's also gravitational lensing, which it cannot be accounted for with any normal classical physics of how optics works. Like basically, this is a lensing of light that is observed in space that is to such a high magnitude or degree that cannot be accounted for by anything in classical optics, but is precisely predicted by general relativity and gravitational lensing. And then the third thing we also already talked about, the proof that space-time is bendy, the measurement of gravitational waves at LIGO. We talked about this. This is an actual detector that was set up specifically to measure bendy spacetime, and they successfully measured it, and they've matched it with optical predictions, like with optical measurements rather. Like they show, like they can measure actual gravitational wave from a distant neutron star, and then they can point their optical telescopes right there, and they can see the corresponding burst of optical radiation as well. So gravitational waves, gravitational lensing, and gravitational redshift all demonstrate that space-time is bendy beyond any reasonable doubt. Like if you are a reasonable person, you cannot look at that evidence and conclude that space-time is not bendy.
Okay. Can I just say also, when I was on my mobile phone using the app, the links weren't working. I had to turn on my laptop. I don't know if it's this particular stream format. It seems different than what Ozian usually uses, but I tried several times and the link didn't work. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. In fairness to the Lumpy or whatever his name was, I just thought I would put that out there. But Grayson, you sir are a sexy genius. Thank you so much for all of this. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So what I need to do is create like the short link thing, and then just change it, and then just share that. Come to this link, and it automatically redirects to the stage. Or I need to find a different stage. I think if you're not familiar with this, Grayson, the findability of the verticals are pretty good. Like I'm beginning a bunch of subscribers with the vertical streams,
Okay.
and then
Trick.
yeah, then a lot of them are coming to watch our normal streams and stuff like that too. So I'm just trying it out. And so if I'm not like sharing a bunch of stuff like we're not really doing today, we're just here to chit chat and stuff like that. We still have the 10 people up on stage. They just can't see my face big and bright on their screen. But most people, if you look at the analytics, a lot of people use cell phones. So
yeah. Well, that's awesome. And thanks, Ozian, for having this stream. It was like honestly perfect timing for me. I was on my way to go get some dinner, and then I saw it and I was like, I gotta hop on here. But
appreciate it.
I think I am getting to that point where I do need to get some food. So I'm probably gonna dip out here. But this was an awesome conversation. Thanks a lot for having this and having me on.
Yep. Follow Critical Base Theory on YouTube.
Yeah, I just passed 2,000 subscribers yesterday, so
nice.
I'm pretty happy with that. So check out the channel if you're interested in anything I've been talking about.
Should post his link in the chat.
We did.
I think Max
did?
maybe did earlier, but yeah.
I posted a banner too. I'll post it again.
Nice. I appreciate that, Ozian. Yeah, I'm always trying to do debates with flat earthers, young earth creationists, any kind of pseudoscience, really. Thanks, Ozian.
There it is.
Good to see y'all. Issa, Tyler, DJ.
Oh,
I just want to be clear.
See you, bro.
Science doesn't falsify Christianity, but it definitely falsifies young earth creationism and flat earthers.
That's a perfect summary, Ozian. With that, I'm going to dip out. Peace, y'all.
All right. Adios.
Later.
All right. Well, not all of you have subbed to Critical Base Theory, but a few of you have subs because we got new followers. And Critical and Grayson hasn't been here for a while, but
what's his
Grayson
link? I'll follow him. What's his link? Is it in the
chat? Max just posted it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll follow.
I'm gonna go and subscribe now. Boom, done.
Yeah, he is like very smart when it comes to cosmology and evolution too. So he spends a lot of time studying both of those topics to debate those topics. That's why I recommended Evidence for God or Evidence of God debate Grayson, not me. Like, and he wants to insult me because I admit I'm not an expert in evolution, while he pretends like he is. Like, I wasn't dismissing people that can go and learn evolution on their own. It's just he didn't, and I'm not. But I know more than you. Anyways, doesn't matter. But I don't know. Any other questions? I don't plan on ending the stream for a while. I sort of want to chit chat with people. I don't know what time it is. 10 o'clock, maybe for another 30 minutes. No, I think I'm getting tired. Pretty getting late. Might run to the store. You guys have anything you want to talk about for a few minutes, or anything else you want to talk about, Tyler, DJ, Issa?
I always have something to say.
Go ahead, man. Say it.
Yeah, I agree with the point. I think holding to that, the one important situation of we hold this argument that religion and science have to meet. I don't think that they have to. And I think that that's the problem, is that in these debates, and I want to do that flat earth debate where I can argue as a flat earther. I don't know if we can get like a person who's a flat earther will debate Globe, but I just want to showcase kind of these arguments that are being used. Really what it is it's like this appeal to authority. And it's not appeal to any authority, it's their particular specific ideas. And I think that's not inclusive.
Sorry.
It's not inclusive. And I think me personally, I love discussion and I love dialogue. And I think the way that we can have discussion and dialogue is if we're really open, you know?
Other big thing, you know, that I've heard some my favorite scientists out there, you know, have always said, you know, question everything, even question us and what we say. Don't just take everything we say as 100% truth. Do your research, look into it, you know, but at the same time, don't question things to the point where you end up down this weird, crazy rabbit hole where you end up as like a flat earther or any of the other crazy out of the park conspiracy theories, you know. It's like I told people, like, I want to believe Sasquatch is real, but I have no evidence for it. But it's just something nice to think about. It's nothing that's gonna hurt anybody or harm anybody. But you know, it's just more of like it's good. It's good to believe in things that you may not have evidence for, but just don't say it's true unless you can back it up.
I mean, to that point, I would say one of my favorite quotes is, "The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open, but you don't want to be so open-minded that your brain falls out." So just like a parachute, it has to be in good condition. It has to be properly packed and well taken care of so that you can, you know, rely on it when you need it, if should the occasion arise. So I like that analogy.
Go a step further with that one is your brain's like a parachute. It's good to have open, but if it's too open, then you're going to plummet to the earth.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it has to be in good condition. If it's ripped and torn, it's not going to do its job. So it has to be well packed and everything, because you can have it in good condition, but if you roll it up into a ball and stuff it in, it's going to come out in a knot and you're still going to hit the ground. So, you know, and there you got me saying, you know, now. Oh, man.
Well, I just want to point out, like, you can be receptive to listening to ideas, but you shouldn't be changing your beliefs and your worldview based upon solely on testimony and what other people tell you is true. Now, it should go with how much confidence you have in the sources and stuff like that. So if you do, this is where I was going in yesterday. We don't teach people how to actually do research. People think doing research is looking at YouTube videos. While it's good to get sometimes a summary, if they have credible links there and stuff like that. But if it doesn't match what you know, because I might go look at a YouTube video to get a refresher. But when I was looking at tidal forces and stuff like that, none of the videos I was watching was making any sense and wasn't fitting my understanding of gravity, which is all matter attracts all other matter. And then I find out they're all wrong. Almost all of them are wrong. Not all of them are wrong. I found a couple that were correct. And then I go find the papers and I find the actual academic sources that confirm I was right. Then I have PhDs in physics that come on here. How do you know all this stuff? It's like, because I took the time to look it up and not just, but then I go to science communicators and there's famous ones out there that are teaching these fundamental concepts wrong. And then you get people that wander in and say, well, look at these idiots. And it doesn't explain tides on. And then people are convinced because he correctly shows how it doesn't explain the tides on Earth. But it's because they've been miscommunicated to. It does explain the tides on Earth if it's communicated correctly. So you get like people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever that talks about you can't see curvature except like at 80-some thousand feet. But we know that's not true. Like the math shows it's a much lower. It's actually, you can do with video compression, you can measure it at like 200 feet above sea level, or with camera complexion. I also have another little video. This one's a little funny. This is like,
well, and also Baumgartner, he said that when he went up to do his longest jump, like he saw curvature, and Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying, oh, he couldn't see it at that height. It's like, well, I'm gonna believe the guy that was literally up there.
Yeah,
You
Neil
know?
deGrasse Tyson doesn't know what he's talking about. He's wrong about the math. And I'll say that's an appeal to authority fallacy. And I got this other little thing.
I don't know
They
what's
said-
happening. I'm
They
confused.
said that
and
was
scared.
proof. They said that was proof of the ether. This guy with the friggin' syringe up at a friggin' like little, you know, you buy those little globes from friggin' stinking like the store
Amazon or whatever.
Yeah, flushed twice.
I will say one thing that does kind of terrify me in today's world is, you know, like social media, I believe originally started out as a good thing, but I think it's gotten to the point where it's given too much to people pushing too much misinformation. You know,
Really?
because like, for instance, like with TikTok, you know, like unfortunately I'm stuck in this algorithm on there where I can't get away from all these.
Can I ask you? You could reset it. Can I ask you a question really quick?
Yeah.
I want to delve into that thing where you're saying social media is this bad thing.
I'm not saying it's
that-
bad. I'm just saying it's
No. I
kind of-
want to poke at that, and because I want to demonstrate that it's a fallacious argument. Let me show you why. How much social media did we have in 1930?
well, none.
Yes, we did.
Well, I mean, not the social media we know today, but you know, newspapers, news, and all that.
Word of mouth, people talking,
Yeah.
memes, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and what type of movements arose all across Europe in the 1930s?
Are we talking about the Germany thing?
Not
The
just
Bolsheviks.
Germany. What about it? What about Spain? What about Italy? What about France? What about Germany?
Filthy commies.
Well, they were, yeah. So we had a lot of fascist movements that built up based on what was social media of the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm just meaning like in today's world, we get it much more frequently.
Stop. You say that. How do you know that's true?
Well, I'm just meaning like information back then, you know, it took
Oh,
a bit longer to get information out as like
Are
it
you-
is today.
Are you seeing the world was worse then or better then?
Well, I mean, it would determine who you were talking to back then.
In Europe, would you say in the 1930s and 40s that the world was worse or better?
I'd probably say a bit worse.
Oh, but they didn't have Facebook or TikTok or Wikipedia, all this access to resources and counter propaganda. You know what Christopher brings up a thing, propaganda, memes, this whole culture and stuff like that. What's a problem with having an insular culture where where this social media can be controlled within a specific environment? What could happen?
What do you mean?
Like
Censorship?
you get, censorship can happen. You can suppress counter propaganda. You can suppress counter information that goes against the narrative of the country. It's much easier to control the flow of information without the internet that we have today. So in the 1930s, it's much easier to convince a bunch of revolutionaries to overthrow the Tsar in Russia, or in the 1900s or 1900s. Then you go back to like the 30s and the 40s. It's much easier to convince people to accept fascism and stuff like that, and actually have major movements that overthrew countries. Much easier to control the media when you didn't have access to these big platforms. So the problem you have to worry about is like China that
Well, yeah.
censors social media. The access to having social media, I would say, is it good or bad compared to the 1930s and 40s?
Well, I mean, I would I would need to know the statistics of how much people have taken from what they've seen on social media today, and it's gotten them on a bad track. I
Is
mean, I don't
today
really have that information. So
We'll just look at like masses, global populations. Is the world better off today than it was in the 30s and 40s?
But what's your metric?
well, I mean, worldwide, yeah, but I'm more of like talking
Goodness.
just mostly in the United States at the moment, because I have more information about the U.S. than worldwide. I mean, I don't know everything that's going on in the world at the moment.
So let's go back to the 1850s, where propaganda about slavery and racism, or let's go back to the 1940s, 1950s with Jim Crow laws and stuff like that. It's really starting like the 1880s, didn't really end until the 1950s, 1960s with Jim Crow laws and the control of information within those communities and the inaccessibility of the media and the information for people to the young people and stuff and the people in those areas to have access to it was not democratized like it is today. So media has always existed. It's just been democratized like it is today. So you're complaining about the democratization of social media, but is the democratization of social media a good or a bad thing? Look at past examples. What happens when we don't have democratization of social media?
Well, my main point is mostly just getting into like, people listening to not misinformation, like, just regular misinformation. I'm talking about like medical misinformation, and stuff like that actually is more and more people are believing in, and it's not getting help from doctors they need to, or other stuff, because they think some random herb or some kind of salt is going to cure them of something or something like that. People aren't getting the help they need. So,
but they have access to more. Do you think that was a worse in the past or better in the past? Do you understand what snake oil salesmen are?
I mean, yeah, nowadays they're everywhere, but
no, snake oil salesmen, where it comes from, like the whole concept.
Yeah, people selling, liquids that said would cure this or cure that, which really didn't do anything.
And where did they posted their stories in newspapers, and they took out ads explaining that stuff in newspapers and media and circulars and pamphlets, and setting up little kiosks and stalls and stuff like that. And people didn't have any way to fact check either, did they? How would you fact check if their remedy was going to cure you from the ailment they claimed it would cure you from?
Well, I mean, you need somebody to study it.
How would you fact check it in 1880?
I know.
Probably by word of mouth. I don't know.
Well, by word of mouth is where you learn the snake oils can cure you of your depression.
Well, I think really that would be more of a placebo thing.
No, heroin will make people change.
Oh, well, moods, yeah. I mean, If it's got drugs in it, yeah.
This is my point, DJ. You're looking at things from a perception of presentism. You're looking at things like, oh, it's worse than I wish it was, but you're not looking at it through a historical lens. So,
well, I'm not saying it's worse now than it was back in the day. I'm just saying that I just see more and more people going on to this bad road that they just believe what they're being told by random people on the internet than researching it.
Compared to what?
Can I just say,
what are you contrasting it with?
Well, I mean, everything in the past is going to be worse, but it's like I can't always just take everything now and just be like, well, we should just let it keep going because it was worse in the past. Oh,
it's not my point is perspective, but go ahead, Tyler, because I don't think you like that I'm pressing people's beliefs about.
It's not that. It's just, I think that, because what you were saying earlier about how there's some scientists that are spreading misinformation due to a lack of understanding. I think it's worth
not
pointing
misinformation.
Out.
It's not misinformation. It's like they're simplifying it too much, and it's causing misunderstandings.
Okay, that's fair, but I feel like, in fairness to DJ, everybody's just doing the best they can with the information that they have available, and a lot of times, even if they have the right information available, it's subject to their interpretation of that information. And so
Sure.
there's a lot of moving parts where people are really
So
just playing the game of life with the
Well,
hand
like,
dealt.
So I'm going to press back at you, Tyler. Then
All right, let's do it. I
does
love this
having more access to more information, democratizing information, social media, communication, stuff like that, does that make it better or worse than it was in 1930s, where you have enclaves where the government can control your access to information?
I would say things. I don't know. That's a tricky question to answer, because when the government has the control, there's this one narrative, and if people turn against the government, they might just reject that narrative. But right now, what we have is a free for all, and so there is a lot of misinformation that isn't being labeled as such. We saw this with the whole Twitter thing when it came out that there was, in fact, people getting shadow banned, and there was contrarian opinions regarding certain healthcare aspects that were being squelched. So even with this whole flat Earth thing, like flat Earth, I'm not sure. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is a bit of a free for all right now. The information age is kind of like the Wild West, and anybody can really say anything. And there's a good argument to be made that sunlight is the best disinfectant for bad ideas. And by getting it all out, people can label it as, no, that's silly. But we know that that's not the case, because there are people that'll say, well, the government did this, and now I don't trust the government, and so I'm going to believe the opposite of what they say. And so there is a bit of a massive gray area there. And when we compare it to
gray area, but are you seeing that's a new concept?
I think it's no. You know what? That's a good question. I don't think it would be new, because I don't know. It's
well, like, let me give you an example. Like,
topic.
I've been seeing a lot of people on social media saying stuff like, when it comes to lead, saying like they didn't get rid of lead because kids were eating the paint and that it's not toxic for you. The reason why they got rid of lead is because it prevents humans from being interfered by frequencies that governments and other things are sending to us, which is basically their way of saying they want lead to be brought back into products, which we have found know that lead can be harmful to humans, but people are believing these random people on the internet, and they're now wanting lead back, or they're putting lead into stuff that they use, which can be a problem, so and that's what I'm saying is it's again, it's not a big majority of a population, but I do see these small things from people that can eventually branch out to be bigger and bigger, and more people will get on board, because people aren't looking into the science or the research that actually exists, because some of it was written by, like Tyler said, the government. They just say, hey, I don't believe it because the government, is against it. It's the same thing with when it comes to chemicals. It's just people don't understand how chemistry works. It's like with that whole Lunchables thing where they found lead in the Lunchables.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Hey, thank you, Mark Reed, for raiding our channel.
Yeah.
People might have trouble like joining. If you want to join the stage, we got room for people. Thank you for coming over. We're talking about social media right now. So, I'm sort of like pressing at the point that social media is different today than it was in the past, and it's worse in the day than it was in the past. I'm sort of like, so your big joke point. I think you said that something like Peter North. Yeah, I just watched a video with Peter North nowadays is greater than videos of Bigfoot. It's sort of funny. But yeah, if people want to join the stage to have a discussion, we were talking about cosmology in general, Christian cosmology, and worldviews and stuff like that. Then we had Grayson on, have a good discussion about Big Bang cosmology, and now we're talking about the dangers of social media today. And I'm trying to push back at the concept that, how do we know it's actually more dangerous today? How do we know that the democratization of social media isn't actually a positive thing today versus what we had in the past. My argument is that social media has always existed. It's always been just in a different form. And I haven't heard Issa speak for a while. Have you been listening to the conversation, Issa? You
Yes.
have any input to put in?
On which part? Like which point? You
Like
were
social-
asking, like,
Do you
about,
think
like,
the dangers of social media for movements versus the past? I was sort of pressing back, like,
Sure.
well, we had social media in the past. It wasn't on the internet. Like, it was pamphlets, it was word of mouth, it was memes. Memes have always existed. The concept of linguistic concepts have always existed. And so it's a democratization that we have in the United States with social media. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And that's really where I was pressing about it. So I don't know if you have any concepts.
Tim Bob asked, he asked me, is it a social media portal to hell? I think, as I believe Tyler and I think DJ was talking about this too. So what social media does is it gets us, it's a speedway of information. So in the past, information was disseminated at a much slower pace. Now it's at a touch of a button. You can get, you can learn the entire history. Can you imagine, even both of us, like us growing up, technology was very different, right? We had things like microfiche film, and you had just the way the technology developed so fast, even in our own lifetimes. Like a relic that exists are payphones. We don't have payphones anymore. They're just like, if you see it, it's like a relic that's existing there. Most of them are all gutted and
Went really quick. The payphones, don't forget payphones. I was out. My car was towed. Didn't have a cell phone because it was in my car. Because I got sick, went to hospital. I went to go find my car. No one. I walked like a mile and a half after leaving the emergency room. No one would stop to help me. None of the stores had a phone. They didn't want to let me use their cell phones. None of the stores I went into had a phone I could use to call anybody for help. And there were no pay phones. But continue on with your conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's in a sense we were, and people are just a lot less friendly. People used to hitchhike, and I've actually had people ask me for hitchhiking. I guess I come off as a friendly person, but it's not like really long distances. It's like a mile, like in the city. They're like, can I hitch a ride from you from here to there? And I'm like, sure, I'll definitely help you. And sometimes they offer money, and I'm like, no, I'm willing to help. But like in general, like even hitchhiking, all of this stuff, it's like people we're so unfriendly. We become so afraid and terrified. I think there's actually a lot of problems now in some sense that it's even more exacerbated in the past. Like we relied on each other, we trusted each other, and now it's like there's so much distrust. It's like I can't, like what you said, it's a powerful story. Like if I saw you, I'm like, dude, sure, come on, I'll give you a ride. But we speed by. Like I always try to be I try to note, like, for example, if I see a snowstorm, like, yeah, people have AAA, but sometimes they might not have access. So I'm like, maybe I'll stop and see if I'm able to. I'm going to try to stop and see if the person needs help, because I don't want that person to be stranded, because I wouldn't want that to be me, So, like, I don't know.
I held out a $20 bill. I had a $20 bill holding out hitchhiking.
And I think we should be more open and like be able to be supportive to our fellow person, but we're like, I don't know, there's a tragedy of just not wanting to. We've just gotten so self-absorbed and so individualistic that we just are like, yeah, I don't care about you. And if you'll have AAA, you'll have everything solved, then maybe you don't. Maybe you need help.
Now,
What
speaking of
about social media
hitchhiking,
well, I want to go back to social media because that's why I originally asking about. Do you think let's look at the examples of like the Bolshevik or the revolutions in Russia, the fascist movements. They were all based on social media movements, but they were insulated. The information is easier to control. It's easier to get involved with people. It wasn't as democratized as it is today. So my argument is maybe the democratization is better, but then maybe we're becoming more socially distanced, like you pointed out, which could be
You're
a negative
saying-
point. So
You're saying it was easier to control back then, but how does the methods of media control back then compared to now, where it's all done algorithmically and you can actually target demographics? Because that's kind of what I was stumbling at earlier when you were asking me. Is I don't know if it's easier now compared to what it was back then, because back then somebody's standing with like a sandwich board on the end of the corner, and that same thing could be done now, and yet now we have like algorithmic demographic targeting and things of that nature. You can pay money on Facebook, for example, to advertise something, and it's targeted advertisement, right? It shows up on the news feed of the people who are most likely to benefit or want to buy your product. They didn't have that back then.
yeah, they did. It was called newspapers. It was called
But we still have that now.
Yeah, but with newspapers in today's world, you can get that instantaneously, where back then it took a whole day.
It was still, we still had the way to promote these type of things to different audiences. We still had people that went door to door. They would get a list of where certain people lived, like people, the famous one, you'd find out where all the old people lived, and you go sell them a new roof. That when they need a new roof, and they could get away with it because there was no like regulations to protect those people. There was no cool down period or something for contracts and stuff like that when people came to your home, so people could deceive people, be more deceptive. Then you have resources to go look that up. Not saying that can't happen today. I'm just saying that all these type of things still always happen. If you're seeing the world is more fast paced or something like that, it can't be, because there's still only 24 hours in a day. If you're exposed to more marketing, that's just your own consumption habits. Either not every person lives in the newspapers or lives in a media places where they're always exposed to marketing and stuff like that. So,
well, my point is just with today's world, you can get more information from more crazier people than back in the day. Because back in the day, they actually had to go out of their way to do stuff. You literally can just pull up your phone, go through like I use TikTok more as an example because it's one of the most used ones out there. You know, you can see so much bad information on there, you know, in a short amount of time than somebody coming to your door or making up pamphlets or making up the newspaper or the news itself, you know. So it just, you know, and reading comments and stuff of what a lot of people say is like, somebody will say like, oh, if you want to cure all these diseases, just take cayenne pepper and Celtic salt and just drink that once a day. And you got people being like, oh, no, it's 100% works, you know. And
once again, let me put this in context. If the snake oil salesman comes to your town and explains how this is a miracle cure, you take the cure, you get drunk, and it works for whatever reason, you don't have any way to research what happened. You don't have any counter information to go look it up. You have to rely upon the next person that comes through with the proper information to educate you. So nowadays, people, let me finish. People must choose to be intentionally ignorant on these topics.
That's not fair.
It is fair.
Well, we were talking about deep fakes. There's people that have gotten calls and somebody was simulating like their kid's voice, and they were like, well, your kid's been arrested and stuff like that. That technology didn't exist back then.
First of all, yes, con artists have always existed and always existed to take advantage of their mark.
But secondly, the profiling nowadays
the point, that wasn't the analogy I was making anyways. The analogy I was making is people have access to both passive information. They can find out what can cure a disease from some charlatan on TikTok, or they can go to the actual source and find it out. 30 years ago, they couldn't do that. If somebody came to them, their neighbor or somebody out there on the friggin' thing selling some bullshit remedy or cure, or they get a flyer, a circular in their mailbox, which used to happen all the time, is fill this thing out. we'll send you this thing, put your credit card in there. We won't charge you anything. Then they charge you like $50. They send you some stupid placebo. There was no methods to validate the claims on these things that wasn't hard to go validate like you can do today. So
miss this,
you
by
can
the way.
complain. You can complain that there's information that's bad, but there was always bad information, always all throughout history. There was bad information, but nowadays you have access to be able to go look it up to
Well, but
find out if it was good or not.
But
If
here's the
I may
thing. Go ahead, Tyler.
because I'm thinking like there's two levels of this conversation, and there's the individual level, and then there's as Ozine was talking about, like the democratization and kind of like the government run level, and something that else that didn't exist back then. Like if I look at what the Germans did, or the Nazi Germans specifically, and what they did. I think about the technology that we have today. There could be kind of like one of those Amber Alert type messages where they say, "Look, there's a bomb coming, or there's a situation. We want you to run to the nearest shelter," and then they lock the door and they turn on the gas. Whereas they say to the people that are in support of them, "Stay home, go into your basement, lock your doors for like a week." All right. And then the bullets start flying, and it's because of the more advanced profiling and the ability that the government has to target the people that they want to get message A as opposed to message B. I feel like the mechanisms of genocide are far more refined now than they were back then.
Well, there's been no examples of that happening, so I don't see how that could be true, because people, as long as the information is democratized, people can always go and fact check it. So that's the worry. You have to maintain the democratization of the information and squelch your desire to overregulate the information. So we have an example with history of something just like that, Tyler, that really actually happened. Do you remember an example? It happened in 1895, I believe. No, it wasn't 1895. Let me see when it was.
I'm having fun. I appreciate you. Just so you know.
It happened in 1938. There was a radio show. Do you remember the radio show?
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
We're all on the same page here.
War of the Worlds was a radio show that was aired, and there were people that believed it was true.
Okay.
Right? So would that happen today?
Probably.
Would it happen to the same extent, or would people be able to fact check the information to see if it was really happening?
It's an interesting question.
I'm gonna lean more towards people would probably be either the same or a little bit worse.
Why people do this all the time? They post. So we had an example recently, right? Didn't we just have an example of the rapture was supposed to happen 40 days after the eclipse?
Well, I mean, a lot of people during the eclipse did a lot of crazy stuff, because
Sure.
they thought it was the end. So
some people did. The point is that so the social media at the time was the radio in 1938. What access did people have to go verify if what the radio was saying was true or not? Some people did, right? Some people called up the radio station and verified, oh no, it's just a story. Some people responded to it like, oh shit, there's really aliens. Like some people took it very seriously.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of what I was saying earlier about how people are just doing the best they can with the information available.
Yeah, but now they have access to more information. It's because it's democratized.
Well, no, I mean,
they don't
I
have to go to the
understand-
library.
Well, no, I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is with how much more and more people have mistrust for, let's say, the pharmaceutical company, doctors, the government and stuff. Anytime any of those things disagree with something that somebody's spouting on the internet, they go, oh, it must be true because these people are all out to make money off of you and they don't care about you whatsoever. But these people on the internet which, by the way, a lot of these people I've seen are usually trying to sell you some kind of supplement or something extremely expensive, so, but I see more and more people, and again, this isn't a vast majority, but, it is still, enough that they do spread their information to other people they know and get them on board, but the thing is, though, is when people do look up information to fact check something, they usually don't believe it if it has to do with any of the big things like government, doctors, and all that kind of stuff.
But those are specific people prone to conspiracy theories, prone to seeing patterns in nature. That's not the common average person. That's a small percentage of the population of the United States. Now, but when it comes to mistrust of medicine and doctors, that's always been the case. There's always been a large percentage of the population that is not wanting to go to the doctor, that is mistrusted medicine, mistrusted doctors. There's nothing new about that. Matter of fact, you know what the literacy rates of adult Americans were in like the 70s?
No, I believe it was pretty low.
It was pretty low because men didn't have to go learn how to read. They could go join the military, or they can go work at a factory and something like that. They didn't have to learn how to read and write. I remember when in the 80s and stuff like that, there was all these programs because all this automation was coming up and people were so afraid of automation that all these adults were rushing to these adult learning centers to learn how to read.
Well, once in a while, I'm able to reach people on certain topics. Like there was you see videos every once in a while of people like randomly giving people like that one chip challenge, like not telling them what it is, and there was one person I saw in the comments being like, there's nothing wrong with this. It's not illegal. And I said, no, it actually is illegal because it is a form of poisoning. You could actually hurt somebody. I mean, there was a kid recently who died from the one chip challenge.
Chip challenge. Let me look at it.
Yeah, I did it myself during a stream with somebody and ended up in my shower for like a 45 minutes.
Poisonous for Tila chip?
It's because they literally have a bunch of warnings on it that say it can cause major harm if you have certain issues. And it's extremely hot.
It's food.
Yes, but they have warnings and stuff on it. Like when you open the package, it has like a big like pamphlet of like warnings.
I understand that, but it's sold as food. But you said it was. What did you make the claim about it?
Well, a lot of people have been giving people this chip without telling them what it is. And and the person was saying that it's not that bad. It's fine. And I was telling them like, no, it's illegal. Like you can't legally give somebody something like that without telling them what it is, because if they get hurt, you can get in trouble. And they're like, no. And I was like, here, go look it up. I'm telling you right now, go look it up and you will see that I'm right on this. And guys didn't respond for about a half hour. And eventually came back and was like, you know what? I apologize. You are correct. It is illegal to give somebody that chip without telling them. Especially the fact that a teen
where is this
died from it.
Hold on though, but where is this law? Because if I'm not sure if it's an actual law or not, but if you claim it is, I guess. But I'm not sure if that's a law. It just falls under
like there's even like lawyers that have seen the video themselves and even talked about it, which is you're giving somebody something that can cause actual harm to the person. Now, it may not, but there is the still possibility it could. Because again, when you buy that chip, it does have a bunch of warnings with it of who should not take it, because it can cause major problems because it's extremely hot.
But it's sold as food.
Well, I mean, yeah.
They sold for people over 21. So I would say if you're under 21, it would be... Yeah, it's official UK chip challenge. The hottest peppers in the world. I don't see anything here that says it's illegal to give to somebody else, so I don't know if that's an actual law or something. So I'd have to look into that. But it doesn't necessarily. If people are dying from eating it, it shouldn't be sold as food.
Well, one person recently died from it, but some people ended up in the hospital. But
who died from it?
There was a teen a week ago.
if I
Who died
understand-
from eating one chip?
One chip challenge.
From eating one?
Yeah, because when you buy it, it's like $10-15 and you get one chip.
I think if I may just clarify what I think is the disconnect that's currently happening is DJ is
No,
saying
no, he didn't eat just one. He ate a large quantity of the chili pepper extract, and also had he had a congenital heart defect. So he died because of the combination of the two. He didn't just eat one; he ate a whole bunch of them.
I think what DJ was saying though is that if you give someone a chip without the warnings and you just kind of say like, "Here, take this," it's kind of like removing the warning label and giving.
I understand. Well, it's not a warning label, and it's not a medical warning label. It's just like it's food, so it's not a medical warning label. Just because they say warning this, like I'm looking at the one here, I don't see any warning labels on it. I'm looking at the red hot chili peppers. This product is for adults, not suitable for children or anyone under health conditions or allergies. So you shouldn't be giving it to people under 21. But I bet you it was a kid that gave it to another kid. It's only
Well, I'm
100,
just saying,
550 Scoville. That's not too bad. He shouldn't die from 550 Scoville unless he must have eaten the whole friggin' box. Huh.
well, they
Anyway.
do sell bags of those chips nowadays. You can buy them.
But I don't see how this is pertinent to the topic. People take advantage of other people. The whole point of the topic is you made the claim that it is much worse today without validating the case that it is much worse today. You're just complaining about bad things that happen. Bad things have always happened. What do we do about it? Do we put restrictions on social media?
Well, I wouldn't say restrictions. I would just say, like we need to do more of like what we do with flat earthers. When you look up information, you go to a video about flat Earth, there's that description at the bottom, telling you
do
some
that on
information.
YouTube. YouTube does that for like 20 or 30 different topics.
Yeah, well, I'm just meaning that should be throughout all of social media. So somebody's talking about, for instance, if you want to cure cancer, just eat cayenne pepper and Celtic salt. There should be a big thing, some warning being like,
Well,
please go see a
needs-
doctor. Don't.
Somebody needs to report the video, or they need better AI algorithms to track the video. But that is really like, it depends on what they're saying. If they're saying it will cure cancer, that's a false claim. But if they're saying like, hey, try this out, maybe it'll help you, that's not.
No,
necessarily the case.
they do claim it will cure like certain things
understand,
will cure. Yeah.
So I have an
I'm
idea.
not disagreeing.
As a bit of a because we keep saying like, are things worse now? What if we try to discuss, are things better now, and kind of turn the table on the discussion?
Absolutely.
just in like, is targeted advertisement better now, like to the benefit of society regarding the specifics and the intricity of the profiling? Because I maintain, and some people say I'm crazy, but I maintain that the day I considered, and all I did was I had a thought about updating my toilet and maybe getting a bidet, and I didn't tell anybody, but then the next time I scrolled down my news feed, I saw an advertisement for a bidet retrofit for my toilet. And I still think that somehow my phone either read my mind, or people are telling me the algorithm can see the dilation of my pupils or something, that somehow my news feed knew that I was considering getting a bidet and was able to target me for that type of advertising. So I want to know how that works.
You think did you say it, or did you?
I never said it.
Search engine?
I had the thought in my head. I never told anybody. And then I scrolled down my Facebook, and there was an advertisement there.
Seeing hits and it might have been something that was on you had seen it before, because something about the algorithm was triggering it before, and then you thought it was an original thought, but it wasn't actually original thought. That's probably more likely. You had been seeing them already, you just weren't being consciously aware of it. Like nobody can read your mind by tracking your eye movements. That's just but targeted advertising has been around since print media has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah, and I guess if you wanted to talk to people about God, you could just stand outside of a church and sell cookies there, kind of a thing. I can hand out pamphlets. Like, I get the whole targeting demographics thing. I'm just saying that nowadays the profiling is far more intricate. Like, we know a lot more about psychology now than we did back then.
Yeah.
What people are prone to do. So, like, you can target certain people not just for negative, but for positive as well.
Well, usually advertising's selling products. So, and advertisers, at least on the major social media platforms, have more vetting than they did in the past. Not saying that they're always that good about vetting advertising, but in the past, it didn't matter. You sent in a check with your ad for your snake oil remedy, it got posted. You send in your ad to defame somebody and for some race, and it got posted. Then you get the friggin' lawsuit, the New York Times whatever the heck lawsuit that was. Then we changed the whole thing about friggin' slander law in the United States over that one lawsuit. Sullivan v. New York Times. Like, because the newspaper didn't care. They just posted anything.
Okay, so, and getting back to what we were saying before, like, are things better or as opposed to are things worse? If you go back to like the 70s and like the development, I saw like a whole thing about how like cereal developed and like Wonder Bread and stuff like that, and they had like enriched bread and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it easier for advertisers to get their product into the hands of someone who's more likely to buy it now compared to then, given the state of social media?
Say now.
I don't think it changed. I think you have more information about products than you did then. Before, you just got mailers in your mailbox about the products that were being sold. You had commercials on television, and you had people come and knock on your door selling their vacuums and stuff like that. They used to sell lists. People used to sell lists with information about people, so many cents, and then they call through the list to try to sell them the stuff over the phone. My dad used to do phone sales, so I'm very familiar with those lists. Selling magazine subscriptions for like $3, what it would cost you to go to the newsstand to actually buy the magazine subscriptions every week for the stuff you're not going to actually read every week. But beside the fact, so it was in magazines and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But most of the advertisement you got was actually going to the store. It had to do with leader items, had to do with item placements in the store and stuff like that. And people were being are manipulated and stuff by that type of thing when they walk into a store. They still are today. So the fact that we just have more, so your exposure to media, the marketing is all about how much you're exposed to media. Like right now, I'm not exposed to any marketing that I see anywhere, but people watching this channel who aren't channel members and paying 99 cents a month are being exposed to YouTube's marketing algorithms. But if you spend just 99 cents, I am talking.
Sorry.
I am advertising my channel and you talk over me. Anyways, but if you just spend a measly 99 cents a month, you don't have to watch that marketing and have it intrude on you while you watch my live streams. The StreamYard link isn't clickable, Samir. Are you on your cell phone? That might be the case, Samir. You might have to open it up and you might have to go to Chrome and go to YouTube in Chrome and click on the link in Chrome instead of using your YouTube app. I'm not sure why it's not working.
So if I may answer my own question, because I'm trying to hold myself to the same standards and question myself just as much as I question you, I would say that my answer kind of hasn't changed from this shift between is it worse now compared to back then, or is it better now compared to back then? Because back then, as I said, in the 70s, there were less channels. And so if you wanted to do targeted advertising, you would put a product with a particular show so that commercial arrived that was more likely to hit the demographic that you wanted. Furthermore, back in those days, there were less products, so there was less noise. Nowadays, when you go and you look at something, there's like all these different brands, all these different like off brands, like knockoffs that are all selling different variations of a similar product. So there's a lot more noise. However, in this current information era, we can kind of sort things by what's the best seller, and we can see reviews and things of that nature. So I still think that there's a giant gray area, and it's tough to compare the times of now to the times of back then and get
Well, we do have metrics to compare it with. We have happiness indexes and stuff like that. So let's just look at health, like longevities and stuff like that, or longer. People are healthier for a longer period of time. Infant mortality is much, much, much lower. Just look at the average lifespan of people in Africa have gone from a year of 25 years of age in 1796 when we invented the smallpox vaccine to almost 70 years of age in 2024, almost a tripling in the average of lifespan in an entire continent in Africa. The world population's gone up 16 times. The world is huge. People want to say we're overpopulated, but every time they've predicted carrying capacity, that's never happened. Worldwide hunger has gone down. Overall peace has gone up, even though we have two conflicts I wish would end on the world right now. There's lots of things I think that are better about the world now, and by better I mean that overall suffering and is declined, and well-being has improved across the world over the last couple hundred years. And with the things we have to worry about is like global warming, stuff like that. We have to worry about how we're using our resources, how we're generating power. Once automation and AI really kick off, we're going to have to worry probably about UBI and stuff like that, and how we're going to deal with living. But then we're just going to have more free time. If that's good or bad, I don't know. But maybe we have more conversations like this when we have more free time, right? So,
well, one thing I will
of biased opinions, exchanging ideas, and the pursuit of truth. I love it.
yeah.
Well, the one thing I will say when it comes to the whole advertisement thing is, you know, it is being shown constantly that corporations do sell our information to other companies. So, you know, they do get more of a general idea of who they should target for certain products and stuff a lot more than it was easier from back in the day. Because back in the day, you had to go door to door and figure out who your demographic was by hand.
They had lists.
Well, I know.
Marketing profiles for customers based on demographics, where they lived, what their ages were, all types of stuff based on who, and they sell these lists between each other, and these lists would grow and get bigger. I'm telling you, they had a lot of data on you before. It may be more now, it may be easier to track now, but this whole concept of this algorithm has been building and growing over decades. It didn't start with the internet. It's been around for a while.
I know. I just think the algorithm that is run today is a bit more out of control, mainly because like you comment on a few videos, you watch a few videos, next thing you know, you're stuck in this like loop, and you're like, how do I get out of this? I don't want to be watching these things anymore. I want to watch something that I actually care about. Like, why am I stuck in this?
I do it all the time. I just search for what I want to search about.
Yeah, I've been stuck in some odd, like reoccurring themes that I don't care. Like I would see it pop up on my feed, and I would watch it because it's something I've never seen before. But then I can't escape it. So eventually, I just like delete my history, delete the cookies, and things like that, and it seems to kind of refresh the whole thing.
I never have it turned on to play next video. I have that turned off. You guys have that? Turn that off. Turn that off.
Well, hey, on YouTube, I'm fine when it comes to that, because, you know, the last few times it's either sent me to a movie that I do like or a show that I like. So, you know, it's not too bad. But it's other social media like TikTok or Twitter or other things that I'm at Twitter, TikTok and stuff, where I end up get stuck in this like loop of like, I don't like these people. Even when I block them or tell it I don't want to see this information, it still gives it to me. It's like, oh.
Get off the treadmill and stop using those social media apps. That's like the solution. But what's up, Samir? Welcome to the stage. What did you want to contribute? Did you want to yell at me about anything?
No, far from that. Hi, Ozian. Hi, Isa. Hi, DJ Batman. Hi, Tyler. And hi to everyone in the chat. I was listening to you guys as I was driving, and it's a very interesting conversation. And you mentioned the one part that interests me when you were talking about the advertising. You were talking about the psychology. And I can't remember. I think DJ Batman says now they know more about the psychology of the consumer, and they know how to use that to their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that what is logical when we say something is logical, something is common sense, it could be twisted so much that that what is really logical, what was really logical at one point, is no longer logical, and they create a new logic, a new standard, and a new way how everyone believes. As an example of that, I was just like really thinking about that just this week. I went to my grocery store, which is a big chain, like here in northeast of the U.S., and I found they had on clearance these Mr. Beast chocolate bars, and Mr. Beast is trying these he's going into the candy market with all these natural ingredients and few ingredients and stuff, and which is great, which is like really great. Like people almost forgot what a chocolate bar should taste like. A chocolate bar should really be 5 ingredients, and that's exactly what he has in it. It's 5 ingredients. That is not like 16 pages. I mean, 16 lines of ingredients, and most of them sound like a chemistry class. And unfortunately, those chocolate bars ended up in the clearance, discontinued. That means the store is no longer going to carry them. The store was selling them for $5, which tells me that Mr. Beast is already making an effort to make it affordable. Because if you're trying to make natural chocolate bars, because I have a friend who entered that business, he said I cannot sell them for less than $10 a bar. Like if I want to be profitable, Mr. Beast is selling them for $5, which seems expensive, but it's not, and it ends up in the clearance. So you're gonna say, what is Samir going with this? What I'm going with this is that the companies lied so much about their product when they say this is natural, this is healthy, this is this, that the consumer almost got immune to that. The big company did that so much that when somebody actually does come bring something to the market that is 100% natural, 100% no lies about it, like no one, like people just sees it as just another thing, because Coca-Cola says the same thing. Coca-Cola, for example, lied to us for years when they wanted to use corn syrup because it's cheaper, and when they wanted to use aspartame, which is cheaper, and they used it with like every time the consumer caught up to the lie, they changed the name. They used phenylamine or whatever they call it. That aspartame has like 7 different scientific names. Every time they throw a new one at the product, and then they tell you, and instead of telling you we're selling you something that is bad for you, it's something that was banned by the FDA for a while and got reinstated after pressure from all the big companies. The same thing for the monosodium glutamate, which was banned and reinstated. Instead of telling us we're giving you a bad product for you because it's cheaper for us, they were advertising it as sugar-free, as healthy, as less sugar, as light, as 0 calorie. They give it all these names. And then when the consumers caught up with that, then they come back and they advertise a new product, and they go back to using the sugar now that they got caught. Instead of saying, oh, you caught us, they make it with real sugar, and they say Coca-Cola with real sugar. And I'm thinking, like, what do you mean with real sugar? It's not diamonds, it's sugar. You've been lying to us for years, and finally you got caught. all that stuff that you told us was healthy was causing people migraines and all kinds of problems. So uh, so this psychology that you guys were talking about, I find it strange because with time it did change the logic. It did change the logic to where someone comes in true and honest to the market, he won't make it amongst everyone that claims they have the right thing. And I'll stop here.
I just banned somebody who was trying to taco lottery. If people are going to make specifically racist comments to try to get, I don't care how you word it. Like they wanted me to say something that was specifically racist,
Oh my
and
goodness.
they're banned and they're gone now. So, bye bye. You can hate watch all you want, but you're not welcome to comment on the stream anymore. You burnt that bridge with one post.
So I
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a good thing.
recently saw a video, and they were comparing like peer review studies regarding like diet beverages versus non-diet beverages. And what they were saying is that the diet beverages are less calories. Like you're less likely to gain weight because the sugar content in the non-diet is so much higher. So I'm not really sure. And then their consensus was, because they actually addressed the whole the taboo regarding like chemicals and this chemical versus that chemical, and he was just like, well, glucose is still a chemical. Like it's all chemicals. It's all natural. Like even when you look at pharmaceutical companies, all that stuff comes from stuff in nature and then it's refined. So there is an argument to be made that like these chemical compounds are actually more pure than their natural counterparts. So I just thought I would push back against Samir, considering like they were citing, I think, like 11 out of 12 studies that show that diet pot is going to result in a caloric, will help with a caloric deficit. And that one out of the 12 studies that didn't, it just kind of said that it doesn't matter. So like I don't understand what the faux pas is. Like I get how some people are like, well, I would prefer honey as a sweetener as opposed to corn syrup, or like as a sweetener. But like, isn't corn also natural? Like I don't get the faux pas.
Well, the one thing I will say is,
Well, let's address the
okay.
thing. He asked a question before you go on.
Yeah.
So he asked if corn syrup is natural, right? So is corn syrup is natural. I know it is.
Yeah.
I think the problem with it is how your body processes corn syrup versus sugarcane is a little bit different. So we can look at, is that really the question you have?
Well, I'm thinking how corn syrup is metabolized compared to honey, which is also refined, but then compared to aspartame, and how like which one has the most calories. Like if you're trying to actually cut weight and you're looking at which is which is the best choice to take, because the site that I was watching, like these guys were professional bodybuilders.
Neither of them.
Neither of them.
No,
What's
it's
wrong
like
with
sugar.
aspartame?
What?
Well, what's wrong with aspartame?
Why should you use aspartame?
Because it's 0 calorie.
Why should you use it?
What do you mean? Like if you're trying to cut,
what do you need it for?
Because you're trying to get a caloric deficit.
But
comparing diet pop to non-diet pop, one would have
don't drink
calories.
Could you just avoid soda?
Yeah, but okay. So I guess just to clarify, like you could just drink water and not have to worry about it altogether. But what they were saying in the video was that from the perspective of someone who's trying to lower their body fat percentage, for example, right? If you drink like a regular, I guess you call it soda, let's just say like Pepsi, right? You're going to be ingesting calories. And these are people that when they ingest the calories, they need it for like the protein and the fiber and stuff to actually get their muscles going so that they can retain their muscle mass. But if they're trying to cut fat using the diet pop, it's almost like a luxury. So like they're not hurting.
First
their
of all,
metrics.
most people are not bodybuilders. Most people are not trying to aren't trying to bulk and cut every friggin' 8 weeks. So most people are just trying to maintain their body weight. The best suggestion. So the problem with drinking soda in general is it's not I drink a lot of it, and my problem, but it can trigger you to be hungry, and it can trigger you to be thirsty. So your best way to do it is if you want the caffeine, you can drink black coffee or black tea or something like that. Without sugar. If you want a little bit of sugar, you can just put a teaspoon or half a teaspoon of sugar into the black tea, black tea is good, but a little bit of sugar into your black tea or honey, like unprocessed honey would be even better. Just go buy real honey, put a little bit in your sugar or some really good brown sugar and mix it into your tea or whatever. You don't have to go buy the can of soda to get the sweet flavor. And then so you don't need to take any of the supplements to avoid the supplements. You could just eat stuff that's dietarily healthy for you. And drinking soda, there's no positive gain drinking soda. There could be positive things with low caffeine intake. I have read that sometimes like the equivalent of a cup or two of coffee a day can have some positive things for some people, but yeah.
Well, I will say, some people may prefer soda because they don't like the other two. Like for me, like I've tried coffee, I've tried it.
Not
just
my point.
Tastes gross, and tea unfortunately makes me nauseous. So I'll have a soda every once in a while. But at the end of the day, it's like I know what Samir was saying, and I understand when it comes to like the products having less ingredients and being more like this or that. But the thing that I look at is also the fact that how much money people actually have to buy stuff. So it's like if you have a choice between a giant bag of chocolate compared to a single bar for $5, most people are going to go towards the big giant bag, because they're also looking at cost and how long it will last, how much they can get. Now, if people are making more money where they could eat a lot more healthier, I think more people would. It's just when it comes to the junk versus the healthy, the price range is quite different.
Chocolate's expensive regardless of the fact, but
well, it depends on where you go and what you're buying.
Well,
because I can get 2 pounds of Tootsie Rolls for like $4.
Because I feel
you can buy 5 pounds of rice that would feed you like as a base for a week for $5.
Like, because I listened to Ozian's response, and I don't feel he addressed the question, which is just beverage A has more calories than beverage B. So why wouldn't you pick the one that has less calories? And you're saying most people aren't bodybuilders. That's fair and everything, but I feel like it's also fair to point out that there's like a bit of an obesity epidemic.
I answered
because of the side effects
specifically. Yeah, I answered the question that the soda can cause you to be hungrier, and not having the sugar can give you a false sense of fullness when you don't have it, and then cause you to crave sugar because you didn't get the sugar that you thought your body thought it was getting.
I don't know, because you're talking about drinking coffee or tea, and I could just as easily say instead of using sugar to sweeten one, you could just use aspartame. I
didn't say that. I said if you need it, you could do that. You don't need soda if you want to cut the calories. Soda has more negative benefits towards weight loss than just the caloric intake. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, now that you've specified that, I would just wonder what specifically are the other negative.
It can make you thirsty, where you're and hungry.
Okay. I've never encountered anything regarding that.
Yeah, if you could pull up the side effects of aspartame, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. If you could pull up aspartame banned by the FDA, you would know what I'm talking about. Aspartame is actually bad for you. That's why.
It's just not the bad part to it. Like, if you're trying to diet, it's not the best way to diet. So the best, if you want sugar in your diet, you should find healthy ways to consume sugar in your diet, and not just use supplements. But yeah, so it can cause skin problems, early menstruation in children 11 years old, damage to kidney and liver, mood swings, addiction. I don't know if people can read this. Sometimes it's believed that sugar and non-caloric sweeteners such as aspartame can become addictive somewhat. Aspartame and sugar cause your brain to produce feel-good hormones such as dopamine, which can make you want more of it. This doesn't mean you're physically addicted to aspartame. It just means you crave it more, is all it is, like a habitual addiction. But that's what he's talking about. My issue, if you're trying to diet, so diet soda causes weight gain. Oh, here, sad but true from the Cleveland Clinic of Health. Sad but true, diet sodas are bad for your health. Diet sodas are associated with weight gain and may cause insulin confusion, where your body thinks it's getting sugar and it triggers an insulin response when you don't actually have the sugar for your insulin to respond to.
I'm trying not to swear. I appreciate this conversation. I'm glad you've presented this information. I'm a bit disillusioned with reality and the state of my country for allowing this into the
well, we didn't know.
chain. So I'm glad I didn't know. No, I'm working with the best information I got that's available.
No, I'm saying that people didn't always know what the consequences are of dietary supplements until we started using them. Like, you can only do so many studies, like blind studies and stuff. Man, the stupid thing. Like, why does it do that?
Because
hold on a second.
Well, you're
there it
doing
goes.
stuff. Can I talk? Or?
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was trying to fix the screen.
I'm reading on this other page here, and what they're saying is that aspartame is far sweeter, so it takes far less of it to get the equivalent of sugar. So if you're saying that aspartame is bad for XYZ reasons, you're still going to be ingesting far less of it in comparison to sugar.
You should I'm seeing you should actually consume the glucose. You shouldn't take supplements for glucose. You should your body needs glucose.
Yeah, okay. I've heard that before. Yeah.
But corn syrup has complex glucose, which is harder for your body to break down if memory serves, where actually straight glucose is easier for your body to break down.
I'm just going to drink green tea for the rest of my life. I'm so angry at the world right now.
Where you get the caffeine from.
That's fine.
But what would be better is to find some type of natural sugar supplement if you want the sweetener. Unless you have diabetes, and you should follow a regulated diet. And here's what I worked for a gym in the past, and I saw many people drive around to park their car near the entrance, then walk on the treadmill.
That's fair, though. I've driven to the gym and I've walked to the gym. Like it's fair.
No, he's saying they drive around. But people, let me put this in context. because you only have so many characters. People will drive around in a circle trying to find a parking spot that's as close to the entrance as possible so they can walk in and go on the treadmill instead of parking wherever's closest and then walking to the treadmill. It's sort of funny.
I guess.
One of the big problems we have, especially here in the United States, is the fact that, instead of somebody walking a mile or even a half a mile down to the store and back, they just hop in their car. Because we've kind of built the United States as a car-dependent nation. I mean, there's a lot of countries that have actually been trying to push away from that and trying to get more people out. That's why they're building more 15-minute cities. And I know by saying that phrase, it triggers a lot of people because they just think it's like trying to take away their rights and stuff. I've seen it a lot when I brought it up.
How don't we
But-
build cities like that in the U.S.? So we build cities all the time.
Well, but the thing is, though, is the car industry and the oil industry, they want you to own a car. I mean, that's why, like take LA for an example, like they always have an issue with, the highway always getting jammed up. So instead of actually putting more money in public transportation and building better ways for people to get around, they just add more lanes, which, for a short time will take away the congestion. But then more people then start to go, hey, it's less congested, so I'm going to go buy me a car. And then it gets congested again. This is a process they've been doing over and over and over again. It's not solving the problem because, car industries, and I looked this up like a few years back, they give a lot of tax money to states. So, they want people to own cars,
What
Car
industries give a lot of tax money to states?
up to about 25%.
Just
DJ.
out of the kindness of their hearts.
No, it's because their whole goal is to keep United States.
Well,
as a
I asked a
car-dependent
question. It was out of the kindness of their hearts.
nation. No, it's
Oh.
so that they can incentivize more people to own cars.
Wait, no, you said they give tax money, or they're taxed.
Is this one of
Like,
those
who-
lobbying is just a legal bribe kind of an argument?
What are you talking? I don't believe that at all, DJ.
By keeping the country car dependent
no,
and making
I
it so
don't
people have to buy
wait.
cars, that they make more money in the end, even if they give up 25%.
I
Or up
don't
to
believe
25%.
card companies are giving 25% of their taxes out of the kind to maintain the car industry.
No, not 25% of their taxes. Overall, of the state taxes, they make up.
I don't believe you.
I'm gonna. Can I just say, if you look at a map of Europe and you look at the rail,
I'm calling
the
bullshit.
railroads-
That's a conspiracy theory that you saw on TikTok. That's a bunch of bullshit. Stop watching TikTok.
the
No, it wasn't from
railroads in
It must have
Europe,
been because
No,
that's
I-
bullshit.
the railroad
That's not
network-
true.
The
Yes, it is
railroad
bullshit.
network
The
in
car industry and the
comparison-
oil company want you to drive a car.
They are not
DJ.
looking.
DJ,
This,
DJ.
they are not giving 25% of the state taxes
Oh man,
for you to buy cars. It's not happening.
DJ, if you're going to make this argument, what you should the angle that you might want to play is looking at the railroad networks throughout Europe compared to the railroad networks throughout North America, because then you'll see the difference between public transit versus vehicular or gas vehicular dependency. But with all that being said, it's getting late for me. I need to recharge my tinfoil hat. The light's flashing and it might cut out, so I'm gonna let you all go. Ozian, I missed you. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I took the time off, because it makes the time we spend together greater. What is that? Distance makes the heart grow fonder. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we had this conversation. It was enlightening. I'm gonna go ponder time and things of that nature.
He-
DJ, it was nice missing you. Samir, I think you've been up here before, so it's good to see
Yes.
you again. Isa, always a pleasure. I wish you'd speak up more, because your insights
Thank
are always something that I could never predict, and I'm always appreciative of. So it's good to see you all. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Have a great night, Tyler.
See you, brother.
DJ provided citation for his bullshit.
No, I think I'm sorry. I think that he just didn't clarify well what he wanted to say, or he didn't present it well. What he meant to say, here is what I understood. What he meant to say is that car makers are big taxpayers, and because they are big taxpayers, every city and state is trying to bring them to open their factories or their facilities or whatever in their state, because it brings jobs. It's very much beneficial for the state and for the city. So when they bring them in, they have to somehow accommodate for them in every way, whether it's in a material way or whether in some other ways. So this is what I believe this is what he's trying to say. For example, the city that I live in, Ford moved out, and when Ford moved out, it's a big problem. Another city, the General Goodyear moved out, and the whole town became like a ghost town.
I
So
don't.
those big companies are like the cities are trying to attract those big companies to come and stay.
I still call it bullshit on the claim that the auto industries are giving money away to make sure that cities are built the way they are. The cities grew the way they are because they were where they were at before we had cars. Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, New York, DC, Miami, Tampa, all these major metropolis areas, Houston, Dallas, all these metropolis areas were metropolis areas before we had automobiles.
No, I understand that. Let me use this as an example then. Amsterdam.
No, I want a citation for your first claim. So I'm looking at an actual
I said
citation
it wrong.
that says
They're not literally giving 25%. That's how much they
you're
pay
wrong
tax.
entirely.
But
They
they-
don't pay
they
25%
want
of their money in
people to encourage-
taxes. What? 2.8% of the federal income tax is from automobiles. 2.8%.
per state.
You look for state, it's your claim. A lot of states don't have automobile or oil manufacturers. So if a state doesn't have a automobile manufacturer, then they don't get any tax money from them.
Well, I mean, in some cases, there is some influence from the big companies and the big foundations and the big. I'll give you an example of that. For example, the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic. They're really controlling the area where I live, and they're buying every hospital. They're buying every, and then they would do some things that like you wouldn't think they can get away with. An example of that, they gave, for example, their employees, they gave them a deadline to quit smoking. If you don't quit smoking by this date, you're fired. And even if you smoke at home, you're not allowed. And you would say, well, hold on, this is piercing into people's liberties. Like they can't do that, and they actually got away with it. The Cleveland Clinic, even on the street, anywhere near the Cleveland Clinic, which is like almost a small town, their complexes are so large, you're not allowed to smoke on the sidewalk. Even if you're not involved with Cleveland Clinic, you're just walking by, you can't smoke there, and they can enforce that.
Good. Why can't they enforce that? If they have city ordinances that say you can't smoke within so many feet of a hospital, then
There
they
is
can
none.
enforce
There is
that.
no such a thing.
Well, I'd have to see the law, but so why can't they have a hiring policy that says none of our employees can be smokers?
If you've been working with them for 20 years and you've been a smoker for 20 years or more, and you've been
Okay.
smoking at home, you don't smoke at work, and then one day they say, okay, you have so many months to quit smoking or you're fired.
Yeah, why can't they do that?
Because
How does
now
that violate any rights?
it violates your liberties. Smoking is legal and you want to smoke at home.
What liberty are they violating?
The liberty for you to smoke at home.
No, they aren't. You can still smoke at home.
No, you can't. According
yes,
to
you
them.
can.
No, according to them, you can't.
No, you can still smoke at home. You're missing
Nope.
the point. Yes, you can. You're saying they outlawed your ability to smoke at home? They can
I'm
put
sorry?
you in jail? Are you
No,
saying they can lock you up and put you in jail if you smoke at home?
No, they just fire you. If they test,
They fire you.
if they test you and they found that
No.
just like they drug
So
test you, they
that's
test
what-
you and they find nicotine in your blood, you're fired.
Yeah. So you had the right to smoke at home then, right?
You had it before the Cleveland Clinic implemented that.
You had it before and after they implemented it.
But you don't have the right to work with them anymore.
Correct. You don't have a right to work for the Cleveland Clinic.
Yes.
You don't. That's not a right in the United States.
No. You need a
Yes.
valid reason to fire you. That is not a valid reason to fire you.
Yes, it is. How is it not a valid reason to terminate employment if they don't meet the conditions of employment?
No, they just changed the conditions of employment after you worked with them for 20 years.
We don't have
And-
Did they have a contract?
No, I mean, what job you expect they tell you that if you smoke at home, you're going to get fired 20 years from now?
Do you have a guarantee for the job 21 years after you worked there 20 years?
Well, if you fulfilled your job properly for 20 years, then you earn the right to keep doing so.
What right do you have to continue to work for them for 21 years?
No, if they terminate your job, they need to give you a reason, and that reason is that you've been smoking at home.
Yeah, they violated the company policy against smoking.
A new policy against smoking that we just instituted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
so you believe that every company can do that?
Within reason, they just can't violate certain rights.
Well,
There's protected rights in the United States they can't violate.
like smoking is legal, and employees
smoking-
of any company they want to smoke
smoke-
when they're at home, they're at the liberty to do
smoking-
so.
Is smoking a protected right in the United States?
It's a freedom. It's not a right.
Yeah, but so they cannot discriminate in employment for specific things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the only, as long as their employment doesn't discriminate you based on the laws governing Title VII in the Civil Rights Act, they can terminate your employment. In the United States, it's at-will employment unless you have an actual contract. And so they give you warning. They said, here, we'll give you all this money, all this time to do. There are probably lawsuits, right? Were there lawsuits?
Well, that was retaliations. That was going to say, and they did the same thing with the vaccine. They gave people like so many days to take the vaccine that worked with them, and if you didn't take the vaccine, you were fired.
Yeah, it was a condition of employment that you're vaccinated.
No. I'm talking during COVID. You remember how some people didn't want the vaccine?
I know that.
Yeah.
They can make it a condition of employment. A condition of employment could be that you're vaccinated while you're working around other people. That is not, they can terminate you for certain things. You could refuse. You don't have to get vaccinated, but you don't have a right unless you have a contract that says that you work for them for 5 years. This is what happened if they breach a contract. As long as your contract doesn't include like things like smoking or something like that, then they can't do that. So, but if the contract says you have to follow the rules of employment and the rules of employment change that says you can't smoke, then that's really not a protected category. So you're gone. Like then, so they lost the lawsuits because it wasn't a protected right.
Yeah, to me, it's I don't know. To me, it's a freedom. Like I don't wanna be pushing the other side a lot. To me, it's a freedom. Like if somebody wanted to smoke, they've been smoking. They go home and they have a cigarette. And it shouldn't jeopardize their job at all. They're not smoking at work. They're not smoking at the hospital. They're not smoking around the hospital.
Hold
They're
on a
smoking at home.
second. There's misinformation here from Wayne. There were several companies that required people to get vaccinated. There was litigation that went up around that, so that's just false. Especially like nurses, frontline workers, as long as if they didn't have a medical or religious reason to not get vaccinated. Matter of fact, the coach of Washington State University was fired because he refused to get vaccinated. The coach of Washington State University was fired because he refused to get vaccinated, and he sued, and he's lost the lawsuit. So
Oh.
you can get terminated for not getting the COVID vaccine. Whatever you're coming up with, that is just not true.
Okay. Okay. I have a better example, and this is like, I don't think you'll disagree with this one. I hope not. Uber company. I have a friend who drives Uber, and he purchased an expensive vehicle to drive Uber. And for a while, Uber has been asking drivers to sign up for this thing where they can pick up people with pets. And some drivers accept, some drivers don't. And then Uber just recently, like a month ago or a couple of months ago, they just sent this thing right before you sign in to drive, like right before you log in to drive. It said that you were to accept to pick up people with dogs and cats or whatever animals, regardless of religious beliefs and regardless of allergies. If you don't click I agree, you cannot go online. You cannot drive. And now you don't find that problematic? Somebody who has an allergy? Forget religion, just an allergy.
If
And
they have
now,
a medical condition for why they can't take certain animals in their vehicle, then they need to negotiate that contract with Uber. But Uber's a gig employment, dude. You can go work for Lyft.
no, I understand, but how are they able to get away with something like that? They just push it on you. People buy a car. For example, my friend, he bought a car. He's got a 72-month payment on an expensive car. And like, if he doesn't click I agree, then he's got to figure out how he's going to pay for that car that he bought specifically for like 70 grand to drive Uber Black.
Yeah, so Washington State fired Rolovic and 4 other assistant coaches last October for failing to comply with the state mandate to receive the vaccine. So all government employees in the state of Washington were mandated to be vaccinated in the state of Washington. Washington State University employees were required to become vaccinated. They refused. They were fired. And he had a $9 million clause in his contract that he sued for he said he was wrongfully terminated. His contract was wrongfully terminated, and he lost. So you can look it up. Nick Rolovic is the lawsuit. I'll share the thing. So there you go. BTF. Ex-Washington coach Nick Rolovic speaks out on why he didn't comply with state's vaccine mandate.
Okay, in this case, I totally agree with you, because if the mandate is from the state, not from a private company, if the mandate is from the state, then 100% everyone is going to follow it. Not only the employees, but even the employers. But if the mandate is from a private company to force on you something that is not in the law, then it's a different case.
Yeah. Well, but no, employers can have conditions of employment too. That you become vaccinated, or you have or there could be religious or cultural exceptions to vaccinations and stuff like that too. So you can have exceptions for certain requirements that are protected by the Civil Rights Act. I wish that was a constitutional amendment, but I can look up employers who fired people for not being vaccinated. Garvey was of 16 New York City. Oh, these were city sanitation workers in New York that were fired. I don't know. You could just look it up, Wayne. So I don't know about Oregon. So did Oregon have a mandate? I said Washington State.
Oregon did, and they ended up firing a lot of medical people. And since they did that, it's actually made it harder to actually get seen a doctor, dentist, anything. It
Yeah.
takes a lot longer. It took me almost a year to see a dentist.
Oh, here it is. On May 10th, 2023, Oregon Health Authority announced that effective May 11th, they suspended the statewide rule requiring the healthcare workers are fully vaccinated as of May 11th. So they removed the restriction in Oregon on May 11th.
Yeah, they may have removed it recently, but it's already caused a lot of major damage, and and I've actually talked to a lot of those people that were fired, and they said they ended up starting their own small practice and basically rolling around in a van now because they're just like, I'd rather just run my own business than get fired for making my choice.
Yeah. The problem, Wayne, is you made a blanket statement that it never happened anywhere, and you were factually incorrect. So you can live up to that you were wrong, which would be what I think the best thing to do is. Like, there are many examples of people that were fired for not being vaccinated. And I don't have a problem with that being a condition of employment. So, yeah. Was it a massive amount of the people? Of course not. It's mostly state agencies and stuff like that, and not private employers.
Well, I would only say it would be a problem if it has to do with, having less staff to helping people in things they actually need. So,
Well, now it's a good thing. Before you said it wasn't ever happening. Now you're seeing it's a great, wonderful thing. Like, this is so funny. Like, you are a motivated thinker, and you don't see that. It's a motivated thinker. No one made an argument of whether it was good or I don't hear an argument whether it was good or bad that people were terminated for refusing to get vaccinated. I would say that's a condition of employment, just like not smoking at the Cleveland Hospital could be a condition of employment. So, yeah. But you never heard of it, but you made the blanket statement that you knew it never happened. You were wrong. You believed a conspiracy theory. You probably saw on social media that no one was being fired for vaccinations. You go do your own research, you found out you were wrong. And you see dozens in one state of medical workers. But I found thousands in New York. Like, if you look across the country, it's going to be a lot more than dozens. But I'm not concerned about it. They are conditions of employment. Dozens in the one state. Yes. Because most people aren't stupid. Most people get vaccinated. Anyways. My employer was trying to get everybody get vaccinated too. Yeah, it said thousands of people in New York City were being fired. Yeah.
We'll say after what they did here in Oregon, it's kind of messed up our medical industry a little bit. Well, I know, but the fact that before it all happened, if I wanted to go see a dentist, I could see him in a month or two, or even less. But now it's it took me a year, 8 months to be able to actually see a dentist.
It's so funny. It's never happened. That's just a conspiracy theory that people are being fired. Now that he found out people were being fired, he's a cheerleader for the law. It's so funny. It's a left-wing mind virus, dude. It's so funny. And I support vaccines, and I it's a real problem. Vaccine denialism is a real problem, but I'm not a cheerleader for I don't shift my opinion like that. It's so weird.
No, so you know, Ozian, just so I don't get anyone confused about my side on this matter. I 100% agree with you. When it comes to the health of others, to me, I believe everyone should get vaccinated because they cause harm to others around them.
People that can, not everybody can get vaccinated. They should always consult with their doctor, I think, or their medical care provider. Because there's certain vaccines I can't take. First, they were giving out the smallpox vaccines when I was in the Navy. So I specifically always read the flyers when they give vaccines about the but what the if you have any type of medical conditions, if you should take it or not. And so I had eczema, and it said there was like a 2% chance I could die from the smallpox vaccine with eczema. And this was like 2000 or 1996 or something like that. I'm like 1996. So why should I get the smallpox vaccine in 1996? They were afraid it was going to be used as a biological weapon by Iraq, by Saddam Hussein, because we believed in the biological weapons. But I read the thing, 2% chance of dying or no chance of dying. So I said, no, I have eczema. I did have eczema. I showed him my rash. So I said, no, I'm not getting that vaccine. So
The one thing I will say I don't like about some of the people on social media when it comes to those things is them pushing the whole autism thing, like it's causing more people to get autism, when actually no, it's the fact that they've only been fully researching it since 1995, and now they have more information, so they're more easy to diagnose people with it because now they understand it better. Because originally, when they first started looking at it, it was more people on the far end of the spectrum, you know, people with Asperger's and stuff. But now they're realizing there's different levels, so they're getting people diagnosed with it properly so they can get the help they need. But people look at like, well, more people are getting autism or getting diagnosed with autism, so it has to be these things. It's like correlation doesn't mean causation.
It was the exact opposite. They weren't diagnosing a lot of people. Asperger's was not considered to be autism.
Well, yeah.
So once they changed and it's not autism either anymore. It's called autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
And type 1 is not called Asperger's. It's called autism spectrum disorder type 1. Asperger diagnosis technically doesn't exist, even though colloquially we still call type 1 Asperger's. But you're all right. We included these things. We also took out some things that we determined was not actually autism. They were actually other things, other type of developmental disorders that were not autism. So people look at the cause and effect. So my kid gets vaccines. All kids get vaccines before we have the ability to diagnose autism. Yeah. So the fact you got a vaccine is just because you're a good parent.
Yeah.
But
and also
to draw the causal relationship, you need to prove the causal relationship between the vaccine and the result. And all the tests that have been done have not drawn that causal relationship between the two. We got to be very careful about this topic with YouTube. So
that's why I'm trying not to say certain things myself. But you know, I will say the one thing that stuns me is when I see people say like, well, when I was growing up in the 60s or 70s, I didn't see anybody with autism. Like, no, they had it. It's just you considered them weird or this or that. You gave them your own labels, but they had it. It's just they didn't fully understand it too much later on. Or like I've seen people say with cancer, like, oh, you know, my grandfather, you know, and grandmother, they never saw people with cancer. I'm like, well, like, okay, just because, you know, like,
yeah, they did.
They did, but it wasn't, you know, like they were still getting fully more research into it. You know, I believe when did they start finding cancer? I forget.
No, the problem with that is anecdotal information.
Yeah.
Unless you can show me stats of the number of diagnoses for cancer in the past versus today. The reason why you would see more diagnosis of cancer is because people live longer.
And
you're more prone to get cancer the longer you live. That's just a fact of our nature, because cancer is usually caused by cell division, and as you get older, you get more cell division. So the older you get, the more likely you are to have some form of cancer. So that just follows from the fact that we're living longer. That's just a different claim. So somebody says, my father, my grandfather did XYZ, is just anecdotal information without actually facts to support them. You should just reject it out of hand. Because we don't have any evidence. Unless you have evidence to show that diagnoses for cancer have gone up because we understand more now, because I don't know about that. Diagnoses for ASD have gone up because we've included Asperger's, and we understand how to diagnose women now where we didn't before, and we got better at younger earlier intervention, because before it was like the severe cases that we labeled autism, not the general Asperger's and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now I will say I think it's interesting whenever I see like conspiracy theorists being like, "Oh, cancer's a new thing. It's the government trying to kill us off. It's only existed for so long." And I'm like, dude, cancer has been found in dinosaur bones. Like it's been around for like ever. So
There's more
Like-
cancer because we live longer. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying there is more cancer because we live longer. I'm saying we know the cause of cancer. I don't know if there's more cancer or not, but the fact we live longer means there's more chance for people to get cancer, because cancer is typically a thing we get in older age.
yeah.
That's just a claim. I didn't make a claim is that we do get that there is more cancer now or anything about that. I was just showing that what some person claimed their grandparent experience is irrelevant, because you have to look at the actual data to see if the rates of cancer have increased. But it is true, if it as the populations live to be older, depending on the genetics of the population, people are more prone to get cancer in older ages. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Why you
I
would
agree
think
with you. I agree with you, but nonetheless, there is still new causes for cancers that did not exist in the past.
Like
For
what?
examples for that, people getting cancer, the wave of people that got cancer from ingesting chemicals in Roundup, people that got cancer from being
Smallville.
exposed to the Chinese drywall, people that got cancer from what is it? There was the lawsuit about mesothelioma, or I can't even pronounce that. So
That's been
there are
around
new
forever, though. Asbestosis cancer, lung cancer, that's been around for a long time. We just didn't know the causes of those type of cancers. But I just want
like
to
with
point out
moles.
that, hold on really quick, and then I'll let you talk. I'm going to go get a drink. The median age for diagnosis of cancer, that means the middle age, like 50% of the people are older than this age and 50% of the people are younger than this age. The median age, according to WebMD, for cancer incidence rates by age is 66 years old. So it is a case the older you live, the more likely.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree.
Will get cancer. Yeah. But go ahead and talk. I'm gonna get a drink.
Now I will clarify on one thing I was saying about knowing more about it, is that there were some things that we know more about that is cancer as compared to back in the past. Like now we know more about moles, and if you see something that's not looking right or discolored, you definitely need to go see a doctor. Where much more in the past they were just like, oh, it's just a weird looking mole, you'll be fine, but actually it was cancerous. So I will say there is some forms of cancer we've understood a little bit more, just like being out in the sun too long and not wearing sunblock. Of course, now there's a conspiracy around sunblock and that it's causing cancer, but I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm like, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you guys. So you don't think that I'm pushing towards the other side, but like as clear as it is, there are still like some, in my opinion, my personal opinion, there are still some downsides to knowing. For example, let's say the science advanced enough to where they can do some molecular testing on your cells, and they can come up with a probability, a very high probability. They do some blood tests, whatever, and they do some whatever, and then they decide that according to the growth level of your cells, the maximum age you can live if you stay healthy and you avoid this and avoid smoking, avoid alcohol, avoid this, avoid that, drugs, whatever, is, for example, 76 years old. And somebody to tell him he can live to 101. And like, I don't want to know that information personally.
yeah.
Yeah, I just had a debate with somebody that said we can't live to be more than 120 yesterday. I pointed out, well, there's somebody that's 122 right now, so that's all.
Well, there was I can't remember which country it was, but there was a woman, I think she died at 125, I think it was, somewhere around there. and they
I've
asked
seen-
her, what is it that you consumed? And she's like, whiskey and beef. I was like, okay, so is whiskey and beef the thing to give you longevity? I'm not saying
There
it
is a
is, but-
tribe. There is a tribe in Asia, or a village in Asia, where they're known for their longevity, and it's like really strange. Like they consume this like really natural diet, and they have the highest living span in the whole earth. If you guys watch the video, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
will
it's only
also-
one person. The oldest confirmed age of anybody confirmed is 122 years old and 122 and a half. So that's it.
Yeah. Well, and also it does come down to, the genetics you get too, because that can also play into a lot of other factors as well of, diseases, cancer, other things, other factors that can actually make things worse for you. So, that's another thing.
Well,
I mean, we're still going to find out things in the future. It's not like
Yeah.
we have the ultimate knowledge. We might find out in the future something as silly, just like what happened with what was the disease in during World War One when like millions of people died, and then they found that the cure was just a deficiency. The problem was deficiency in vitamin C. What was that disease?
I do not know.
Yeah, so
the disease of vitamin C deficiency is or shipped like vitamin
Scurvy?
Scurvy.
yes, thank you. And that was a deadlier disease than cancer at the time, and it was scary. And at the solution was simple. So maybe I'm like hopeful that one day the solution for cancer will be as simple as that.
Yeah.
That the science will
there's-
find something.
Yeah, I mean, science is always looking at new things. Like I recently read a thing on people that are born with Down syndrome, which I have nothing against. Actually, my mom used to help those kind of people, and they're some of the nicest people I ever hung around. They're freaking awesome people. But I know they recently found a way to, while the baby's still in the womb, to actually stop them from getting, Down syndrome and stuff. And of course, there's a lot of Christians out there saying, you shouldn't do that. You're playing God and stuff. But I do ask, it's like, I mean, wouldn't that kind of be a beneficial to be able to help that person, from them getting it, and and that's the other thing you got to run into is when you do come up with things that could help somebody, be what we consider normal. I don't really know what normal really is, to be honest, but what we consider normal, why wouldn't we want to do that? But then I see a lot of, religious organizations always fighting back against that, saying, no, you can't do that. You're doing this, you're playing God, and it's just like, if we find something that can make somebody live longer or live a, like I said, normal life, I think it's in our best interest to do what we can, but that's just me.
Sure. If people are new to the show, please like, share, subscribe. But I think we're going to cut the stream. It's getting late here, and it's going 4 hours. I shouldn't go over 3 hours actually, because
it's about
But you have
9 p.m. here.
a silent Isa showed up. Did you want to say anything, Isa?
Sure, I heard my voice. I heard you call me. I said I'm not going to deter the conversation.
Oh.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation. Like all the different kind of nuances. We kind of covered a lot of different ground. We went from talking about cosmology and looking at faith, and then talking about social media. I think there's so many different interesting things here, and the elements of how we're influenced. I think that's a really important space. How are we influenced, and how do we think about things? And I always challenge us as people to be critical thinkers and free thinkers and think about who we are and what we are and why do we think the way that we think, and try to always challenge ourselves to think better about stuff. That's my little nugget of gold.
Thank you. Any final thoughts there, Samir? Thanks for coming, by the way, Isa and Samir. And
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, I'm actually very happy that I was able to make it. I do watch your videos always recorded, even if I can't make it.
thanks.
So I enjoy the conversation. And I take my hat off to you for having this episode where you kind of let the conversation free flow a little bit because it's always on topic. And it's like good to every now and then, not every time, but every now and then have a conversation with just to let things flow and talk about different topics and stuff. It's very interesting, and like Isa said, it's good to be free spirited and be willing uh, to think freely and then you do. And on my end, I try again agreeing with Isa. I try not to have my own beliefs uh, uh, force my opinion on others. Like if I agree with others about something, I would say why I agree, and I would just try to use the logic without trying to use my personal beliefs as a reason to agree or disagree with other people. And they have the right to disagree with me too.
Yeah, my big thing about this whole channel is to try to say that you can still accept like science and stuff like that and understand how these concepts can still intermingle and join with your own ontologies, your own worldviews. If you're a Muslim or you're Christian or you're Jewish or whatever, you don't have to abandon like that. So I sit there and I become a Christian apologist, a Muslim apologist, like arguing with Nadir. Like, Nadir, you don't have to believe that to be a Muslim, anyways. But did you have anything closing to say, Batman? And thank you so much for coming up on stage, Batman.
Not
DJ?
much. I mean, I'm not the best at knowing a lot. I mean, I have a lot of shortcomings when it comes to different learnings. But
I did post your link about it's 13%. I did post your link, but that comes from all sources like fees, taxes, selling
differences
cars, and
by
all that.
state as well. So
Mhm.
I know California is one of the highest, but and I don't mind it when you push back on things, Ozian. I always like it when people do that. Just I'm not I don't know a whole lot. I try to do the best I can to find stuff, the best I can. But at the same time I sometimes don't know where I'm going to get the right information. So that's why I never claim to be smart or anything, because I'm just somebody trying my best to get through this kind of messed up world that's currently in at the moment, and I know there's a lot of things out there that people say you got to worry about this, worry about that, but at the end of the day, it's like for me, and I'm going to be completely honest with this, I'm pretty much on my own at this point in this world. So, I pretty much just enjoy things the way I want to enjoy them. And, and I do try to stay away from certain things that are bad, but overall it's like, I want to enjoy what I have, and try to get me out of a somewhat what you call depressed state. So, at the end of the day, it's like, it's good to hear conflicting opinions or information that you put out, and that's why I always try to keep my calm and things, try not to get upset or anything. I just go, you know what, this person's probably right, I'm just gonna accept it, and look and do more research into it. And
yep.
But
I push hard. I try to push back a little bit, but
yeah, and that's fine.
I do appreciate having you here. And but when I'm trying to do show notes, don't interrupt me.
That's my ADHD. I'm sorry. It's something I'm trying to control.
It's
whenever
so
you
annoying.
gotta. Sorry.
Well, like I'll have like this really good like sparring match going on in a debate with Ryan moderating, and right in the middle he'll interject himself. I go to make a short about it, and friggin' Ryan's talking. Like Ryan, learn when to shut up.
Yeah, I think
Learn
it's probably
when to just listen.
Yeah, I think it's the ADHD, because when we have something in our mind, it's like we got to get it out before we forget. So sometimes we kind of
Make notes. If you're gonna,
Yeah.
it depends on the genre. If you're gonna be a moderator, you got to be able to learn to cope with stuff like that. But anyways,
that's
thank you
true.
so much for coming. I'm going to do some final notes, but I'm going to boot you all from the state. Well, I'm just going to do this. And I'll let you all go. I'll talk to you all later. Thank you. But I want to share this. This is the final experiment. If people aren't familiar with it, Antarctica, I saw comments about that. Will Duffy, flat earthers, if you're watching about this, tell your like favorite flat earth like communicators to contact Will Duffy at thefinalexperiment.com and to call him and interview him, give him ways to update this, because right now no one's interviewing him, no one's talking to him from the flat earth side, so they have 0 points, and I don't know what's up with that. So you need to stop doing that, become more involved. But with that, I think, and let's see what I got coming up on future shows. I don't have anything scheduled right now. I should have a debate on Wednesday, but I'm waiting on a final message. Let's see if I got that message. I did not. He did not respond. Of course, you know, it's supposed to be on Did We Go to the Moon? And that should be interesting debate. It's like with the frog guy or something like that. Yeah, the final experiment guys don't trust that they're actually going to Antarctica. So please like this show if you like it. Please share it out or hit the dislike if you dislike it. Like, comments, let me know what you think about it. Please subscribe. We do more organized shows. We do debates on here. We do pre-shows and after shows. I do some refutation videos and stuff like that. We get a little long-winded here talking about the topics. So if you want short and pithy, this might not be the platform for you. But I also post some videos. I'm going to try to do some more shorts and some more long-form videos. Thank you so much, Mosella100. And until next time, I'll see you all guys again. I want to leave us all with God bless the Milky Way. Whether you're an atheist or not, I'm an atheist, but I still like this song. So I'll talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
I look up at the starlit sky on clear and silent nights, a reminder of the vastness above where comets paint streaks of light. I look at the stars above to be gazing at the moon so far, where the flag still stands, a symbol bold in the quiet space, silent and cold. And I'm proud to be an earthling, where at least I know I'm free, not trapped on a prison dome world, on a flag-based guided sea. And I gladly stand up next to you and marvel skyward today, 'cause there ain't no doubt we live in space. God bless the Milky Way. Orbited 1,000 times and traveled far and wide, seen the curve from spacecraft windows, felt the tide's persistent glide. So let's teach our children well the truth the cosmos shows. Respect the mysteries yet unsolved, as on and on it goes. skyward